Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Deepest Law. In fact, it's the 200th episode of The Deepest Law, so quite a historic episode. And, Simon, it is the 50th episode of Reviewing Adam Curtis.
It's been 18 months, I noticed, since Deepest Law 151, How Churchill Destroyed British Power and Gave It to America, on January the 24th, 2024, that we have dragged out the Curtis oeuvre.
So Adam Curtis now is 25% of all of Deepest Law, and is single-handedly responsible for keeping the Deepest Law on air after my revamp and cancellation of all my shows. Anyway, welcome, Horace. How have you been?
I'm all right. I'm hot, as you might imagine. And I don't just mean, hot property. I've not been writing much recently. Work has got in the way, but hope to have some new content soon. How's everyone doing?
Very good.
Well, I've been on holiday, which I always love, as people know. I love business as usual. I've always been like that. I loved September back to school, BAU, just normal, just the grind of everyday life, and I hate the disruption of holidays.
Are you enjoying the fact that the weather is on the turn and the summer is receding into memory?
Oh, I love it. I'm loving it. When I saw driving this morning, it was only 18 degrees. I was quietly fist pumping.
I thought we were sharing a kind of soulful kinship back in those days of spring where it was bright and sunny, which is what I like, bright sunny weather.
Yes.
And you were enjoying it as well. And I thought, for once, AA is appreciating the sunshine. I thought, but he's going to love it when the summer turns and it goes back to autumnal boggy mist
absolutely.
and cold.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Grim.
The thing is, it's not even August yet.
No.
Dragging its heels this summer, sticking around too long.
Where I am, it's really humid and there's thunderstorms predicted today. I don't know what you're going on about. It's really sweaty.
No, it's not hot here.
Tropical here.
Yeah.
That means it's probably going to come. If you're east of here, doesn't the weather usually kind of sweep westwards? Is that right?
We don't get storms where I am. I'm in the most moderate place. We never get snow. We never get storms. So we never get catharsis.
Yeah. I don't think I'll hear the words Horus in a moderate place any other time in my life, to be honest. But speaking of hot, we've got some hot talent on the show today. We've got someone from the telly.
I was kind of waiting to be introduced. I was like, this is not very GB news. You wouldn't get this kind of banter without a sort of proper introduction. Anyway, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. I'm going to claim this. This was my idea to bring Nick on because he's been at the centre of the news-making machine for a long time now, and I thought he would have interesting takes on how reality is created artificially and how we all lean into it miserably.
Well, let's hope. That's a lot of pressure. I mean, I'm a sort of a normie when it comes to Adam Curtis. I've watched, some of them a kind of normie amount, so I'm not deep in it like you guys, but I've seen some of the streams. And I've noticed quite a lot of AA's audience does like me, but a certain part doesn't as well. So there's a certain Venn diagram.
Are they wary in some way, do you think?
Well, they're just, it's a typical Venn diagram. They're not all going to like you or we're not exactly the same person. So it's a crossover. So there'll be some that like me and some that go, where's this going on? I'm guessing.
I mean, my immediate thought with Nick coming on, Simon, selfishly, was not
ratings boost.
Oh, he's from the telly. It was, here's another chap who may get at least some modicum of my cultural references.
Yeah.
Oh, right. The Xennial references.
The Xennial references. If I casually mention Egon Spengler, you'll know who I'm on about. You know?
Yeah. You put up another Xennial thing yesterday saying sort of we're the best chosen people. And I thought I was going to take it even further and say we're the only actual people. And everyone else I don't even recognize. You know how like people are always debating in like certain American documents, like did the founding fathers even when they said people, who did they actually? They meant like moral, blah, 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 good standing. I'm like, actually, I only recognize Xennials as full humans.
If you're wondering what we're talking about, I put this together. There's, I mean, I didn't put it together. This is a graphic that exists, and I just annotated it.
I thought you made that.
As if, come on. I did go into MS Paint and write those bits, or PowerPoint and write those bits on the top.
Based on every single issue.
Right, so you can see Xennials. Born in 1977 and 1985, based on every single issue, okay? Gen X, without question. And remember when I used to talk to Semyogog and Simon, right? Yeah. Without fail. Hey, don't categorize me, but I'm a real individual.
Yeah.
It's just astrology for men.
I like Pink Floyd. I'm a radical individual.
I like Pink Floyd. Look at my Metallica t-shirt, you know. They can't handle it, the Gen Xers. To a man, they're like that. Yeah. And then the millennials, I've always thought, summed up by that Take That song, Shine, you know. Such a big star to me. Everything I want to be. But you're stuck in a hole. I just think that sums up all millennials ever. Right, so
and it's not even peak this Take logic, That. It's later Take That.
Take That. Late post Robbie Williams. Take That. That song in particular, as sung by Mark Owen, on that white staircase going up to somewhere. that's every millennial ever, you know. Or was that that Christina Aguilera, you know, beautiful.
Oh, you are beautiful.
Beautiful in every single way.
Yeah, you're beautiful inside. You know, I really can do it, guys, but I'm also like have crippling self-esteem issues and probably go to therapy.
Now, I noticed you've slipped the dates a little bit from the conventionally accepted dates. Gen X usually is 1965 to 1980, but you've started Xennials at 1977, so that kind of means you capture Star Wars a bit as well, doesn't it? That's why you've done it.
Well, I mean, there are other aspects of this, of the Xennials. I think Xennials are uniquely cine and pop literate in a way that is less generationally bound, right? Yeah. So other generations, they have this weird way of compartmentalizing. So like a boomer knows like boomer stuff, but they won't listen to rap, for example. Or, I don't know, a Gen Xer is like, oh, I don't listen to that 60s stuff. I'm just into my, you know, whereas the Xennial just knows everything across the board. Doesn't matter. Like they watch Star Wars and Star Trek. You know, they get every single reference.
I do a podcast with my friend Paul Cox, and we do an extra one on Substack, which is we're more sort of rambling. And when it gets onto popular music, it's just my depth of knowledge is just, it's frightening, even to me. And he doesn't know what he thinks I'm making up the bands. But even like Ben Folds 5, he hadn't heard of. But you're right, we know every pop reference. And also, I'm not saying I'm great with tech, but we can work tech to an extent, whereas Gen X cannot at all. And obviously boomers can't.
Well, you never rest, Nick, fighting the battle of who could
care less. Exactly. I saw them in 1999 on their final tour, obviously, because I'm a Xennial, right? By the way, some people say it's 77 to 83. That's the only critique I have there. But me,
77 is too early.
So is it? Google says so. 77 to 83. Me, Carl, Ed Dutton, and AA are like every year represented from 79 to 82. So it's like Xennials assemble if we ever got together. It'd be too powerful if we ever got together.
And I tell you, PJW is a Xennial. I'm telling you, every bass person you know of is in that zone right there.
Yeah. I mean, I've effortfully tried to sort of, you know, I wasn't a digital native, you know, because computers came as something we kind of resentfully as Gen Xers just had to learn how to use, and it was kind of an irritant. You know, we'd still be happy, you know, writing with, you know, quill pens or something like that, you know, if they hadn't had computers. But you know, I've done that thing of trying to fit in and, you know, dropping a few memes and, you know, hello fellow kids and all that kind of, you know, that's kind of where you get stuck with Gen X, and, you know, you try to, but I mean, I'm happy for us to. You know, we fluffed handling Excalibur, and we're handing it on to the Xennials now. They've got the potency to see us out of this.
Simon, do you have either a Pink Floyd or a Metallica T-shirt, or does yours have Crowded House?
No, I won't.
He's got one on right now.
No, I won't. I won't get the T-shirts, but I do have. I don't have all the Pink
too much of
Floyd
an
albums.
individual for that.
I am a
Do
radical
you have a
individual,
Crowded
yeah.
House T-shirt?
Yeah. No, I never went for Crowded House. A lot of
What generation likes Crowded House? None of them. Just the
Yeah.
Australian generation.
just kind of liberal, Australians.
The same.
Wherever
people
where
like
they
the
go, they
Netherlands.
take the weather with them.
The only advantage Gen X might have, I'm trying to be fair and nice here now after I said they weren't people, is they just were allowed to do extraordinary things. We were as well, because we're the ultimates, the Xennials. But if you read like a Bret Easton Ellis book or something, they're basically allowed to roam around the entire city, like get
Yeah.
molested, kill a guy, then go home, and their parents aren't there for another 6 weeks because they've gone on holiday.
The latchkey kids, yeah. I mean, there was that thing of, this is a concept that some of my friends had with their kids, is they tried to adopt that old Gen X thing of benign neglect, where you were kind of left to sort of wander in the forest or in the garden and, make homemade weapons and injure yourself and all that sort of stuff. But
That really
it's the stuff of a
reminds me of,
madman's
like,
dream.
That's what New Culture Forum types always go on about. I think nice people, but they always go on about sorry, I'm thinking more spiked maybe, but there's some commonality there. But like the way that people are coddled now, overlooked after and stuff, and overly directed by adults. That's a Gen X reaction, right?
It's a Jonathan Haidt book called
Yeah.
The Coddling of the
American
Mind. I think it was. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a sensible center, isn't there, with it when it comes to that. When it comes to just letting kids run feral. And now, I mean, I don't know if anyone has had the experience of being a parent now, but it's ridiculous. The helicopter parent is a real thing, where kids aren't allowed to just do anything at all.
Have
you
have
rebel
had to become
against
one,
it?
though?
Are you like giving your kid a cigar and saying get on with it?
Well, I am definitely more laissez-faire than the missus when it comes to quote supervision. They have to kind of be allowed to make their mistakes, I feel.
And that's what daddies are for. They come to daddy for fun time and, experimenting and taking risks, and mummy has to disapprove.
Exactly. I mean, I remember being a kid and constantly having like a scab on the knee.
Yeah.
I haven't had a scab for years, but when I was a kid, you constantly had because you were falling over. You were, you'd play, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
So,
Running
my brother
around
had his
as
head
fast
cut
as you
open at all
could.
times. Sorry.
Anyway, let us get on. Before we get going, we should do some shillings. Given the Nick has come on, Nick, anything you've got in the pipeline, or where can people check out your stuff especially if they don't want to watch GB News?
Great question. Thank you very much. Yeah, my YouTube's got a lot going on, and I've got an interview with Dr. David Starkey coming out very soon. I've got all sorts of great stuff on there. People you'll probably like. Carl Benjamin, Academic Agent is on there somewhere. We've got all sorts of people. Charlie Downs. That's on my YouTube. But if you really like my stuff, go to nickdixon.net for all the extra content, which is my Substack. Well, that's where the real people, real legends go. Legends only on nickdixon.net.
Yeah, I was surprised though when we did our show. We were like, oh, let's do like this little extra bit where it's just for the members only, and so it was like, right now we're not talking to the main audience. It's just a Nick just came straight out like bombing left and right. It was it was crazy.
Yes, it's the real me.
That didn't happen. I'm just messing around. That didn't happen.
They should go and check out our interview if they haven't, because Alexander Adams said it was the best distillation of the ideas they had heard. I'm sure that was more you than me, but I was there. We did one on the populist delusion, which is a really good summary if people want to check that out, and then we did another one on Trump.
Who's that by?
People often like my outside appearances because I have to kind of give the York Notes version, I guess. Which,
And I wanted to do one on Prophets of Doom, and I've been planning it for almost a year now since I asked you, which is just so mental illness. I mean, talk about, maybe I'm part millennial because that is just mental illness, because I was like, I've got to do the perfect level of research for this, which doesn't exist. So then I've just not managed to do it.
just
and
like
now I think
reading the book.
Well, I've read the book, but I've got to reread it and make extensive notes. I've got to read it twice. It's madness. And now I'm thinking, should we even do it, or should we just do something else? But I don't know.
I sympathise, Nick. That is me with every piece of work I try and do.
Yeah, you know what it's like. It's the procrastination. It's the perfectionism.
Yeah.
It's a Xennial thing. I don't know if it is. I'm just gonna chuck that in.
I don't know. I tend to just drift from one thing to the other in a very mercurial manner. So I start things and then forget about them, and then get interested in something else, like Stalin or something.
Yes,
and then
I
like
hear,
next month there'll be something else. I've always been like that. So
I was going to say, I hear you're a Stalinist now, Father. That's the Father Ted me. That's what I was thinking. Looking at your Twitter, it's like you're full Stalinist.
Always fascinating number of people in your comments as well, that don't seem to realise that you're studying and discussing and anatomizing these thinkers. Whereas, oh, you're a Stalinist now. I never took you for a Stalinist. They can't seem to cut between.
well, I mean, just on that, people casually throw, "Oh yeah, Stalin killed 60 million people." Konstantin Kisin said. I asked the missus. I said to the missus, "Tell me one thing you know about Stalin." Well, he killed 30 million people, didn't he? And it's like, okay, right. Well, we've lost 30 there. And then you look into it. Okay, I mean, he did kill people, no doubt. But where are you getting 60 million from, or 30 million? Where did those stories come from?
Go on, Nick. Go on.
No, I was going to say I always heard 5 million. The kulaks mainly.
I mean, there was a famine that took place in 1932. Although the Stalin version of that story is different from the one you may get. They argue that when they brought in collectivization, the kulaks basically didn't want to give up their land or property, so they destroyed all the machinery and killed all the livestock, which caused a famine, basically.
Yes, I'm against that.
That's basically the Stalin line. So there was a famine, but it was the kulaks' fault for not wanting to give up their land. So
Maoists do the same with Mao's Great Leap Forward as well, right? Like there's YouTube channels and stuff just saying like Mao didn't cause any famine whatsoever. That was all just bad luck. Whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as I've seen, even the most hardcore pro-Stalin voices don't say there wasn't a famine. They say there was a famine, but it wasn't like a deliberate. It wasn't a deliberate kind of, because like there's this idea that he deliberately tried to like ethnically cleanse Ukrainians or something, and there's no evidence of this. They say that it basically came from on the ground resistance to collectivized methods, and also that the farmers were very conservative. They were Christian. And they didn't want to modernize. They didn't want to bring in new tech or anything like that. They wanted to continue their old patriarchal ways. So they say. But I'm just interested in whatever's the truth, So.
I just had one thing. James Lindsay embarrassed himself again. I'd say again when
when does he not?
He quote tweeted AA posting a Stalin propaganda film. And saying something along the lines of, "See, Stalin wasn't that bad." I'm simplifying, but like pretending to take the film seriously. And James Lindsay used it as an example of like the woke right. It was like and taking it literally. I'm like, either he thinks there's two options. He's so stupid he thinks AA is being serious, or he's deliberately lying about it, and that's very bad as well.
I mean,
opportunistic.
The clue, Nick, is when I said this is actual footage of Stalin. And if you watch it, it's so clearly not. It's so clearly a film, But anyway,
also, what is he accusing? The Stalinist version of the woke right, like the Stalinist wing of the woke right.
No.
James Lindsay's whole thing is that there's no
woke
difference
left, right.
between. There's no difference between. It's just old-fashioned horseshoe theory.
Yeah,
he thinks that because we may have read the Frankfurt School. That means you're the same as a Marxist, basically.
Yeah.
That so anyway, Horus, anything you want to promote, sir?
Well, eternalhorus.substack.com. I haven't put out a new piece since the last stream, but I will as soon as I can. Work is getting in the way of everything. But yeah, it's there.
And Simon?
Just lastly to reiterate, to say thanks to Nick for coming on today and to shill his channel. He's starting to do live streams and analysis, and I think that's a very good thing. So please do come and subscribe to his channel and join him on streams, in the comments, in the chat, and let's see where it goes. I think it's a good move.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, great. I mean, I could sit here and grill you about Life at GB News, but frankly, I don't care. So let's carry on. Because we're here to talk about Adam Curtis's hypernormalisation.
Yeah. Okay.
And It's fair to say, Simon, this is arguably Adam Curtis's one masterpiece that people talk about.
Well, it definitely achieves the thing that Curtis goes on about, trying to capture the feeling of now. This is very much where we are now, and it's curious how we've gone through the oeuvre and come across films which, even just from week to week, seem to just hit on some really powerful resonance. And this one, I think, is especially popular, and it kind of captured a new sort of audience, really. The way he's constructed the film is it's a long iPlayer film. This is his second iPlayer film in 2016 after Bitter Lake, where he's kind of freed from the TV schedule and he can do these extensive, sprawling, kind of bookmarked films. He has a concept of people watching these films, maybe stopping them, pausing them at a bookmarked chapter, and then, going off, looking online, digressing, finding information, and coming back to absorb them. And this one in particular, this cost about £30,000 to put together, apparently, and a lot of it was just a gathering archive, and he sends a guy called Phil Goodwin around the world to collect bits of archive from all the BBC outstations and puts it together. This one here is very interesting in that he starts the film. We'll see with the opening shots. He's got that footage of a dark wood, and as a sort of beam of torchlight. And he's kind of used this footage before, all the way back to when you did The Living Dead. He talks about these are the forests where the last desperate battles of World War II were fought. It's a metaphor he frequently uses, where he talks about this a lot in interviews as well. He says, the problem with individualism is that whilst it is liberating and exciting and beautiful, when things get difficult, you're very weak. If you go into the woods at night by yourself, it's frightening, isn't it? You get scared by the slightest noise, the slightest snap of a twig. If you go into the woods with your friends in a group, it's incredibly exciting and thrilling because you somehow feel stronger. And that's really where he's coming from here, sort of, the light penetrating the gloom and, just picking up fragments of information. And again, he's got a typical, Curtis montage at the beginning of the film, which we'll see unfold. And there's some interesting stuff in there. The usual sort of contrasts of kind of whimsy and, flashes of kind of violent imagery as well. There's all sorts of curious stuff. There's part of a Kanye West video mixed in there, a video for a song called Wolves. There's footage of a migrant boat that capsized off Libya in 2016. Bits of Putin, bits of Trump. Guy wearing a F Islam.
It really does go everywhere. This one, doesn't it, Simon?
Yeah, very much so. It's less kind of a bombardment though than you saw with something like All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, where he really leans into that. Walter Benjamin, history is a series of fragments kind of thing. That sort of theme is there, but here he's taking us more into this kind of this kind of dreamscape of the fake reality, and how we get trapped by leaning into that reality and accepting it. And this will come up later. We'll talk about what hypernormalisation means and so on.
Yeah, just before we get going, I just remember this. While I was on holiday, first I went on holiday with the missus and AAA, and then went to Wales for a week to see my parents. And while I was there, I just watched hours upon hours of BBC archives, which I found a uniquely radicalizing experience in a way. Because, I mean, it on the one hand, you've got that SMR thing of just watching nice old footage and so on. But on the other, there are loads of reoccurring themes. And the dominant theme, I would say, is one of decline. But I developed, Simon, a conspiracy while I was watching that. Especially the, what's that guy's name? Fife Robertson stuff. And many other things that are on the archive. I developed a theory that the BBC archive is personally created by Adam Curtis. Because I'm like, it can't be a coincidence that literally every single thing on there is kind of gets you thinking along the same sort of themes that he has.
Yeah.
that Curtis has. So
I mean, literally last night, there's actually an archive page of clips that he has curated. I posted one just earlier where actually it's a bit of footage of him wandering around Dead Man's Island on Sheppey, where there are these ancient graves of convicts who were sort of kept on the hulks and then were buried on the coastline. And gradually over time, the land has eroded and the coffins have come to the surface and the bones are spilling out everywhere. It reminded me very much of this film Stalker that he references. But there's all sorts of sort of recherche bits of archive, as you say. I mean, I was watching last night. There's a bit of Arnold Toynbee talking about religion in one of the clips that he's got stored up as well. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff where he's kind of standing, orthogonally to the BBC version of history, and as he often says himself in interviews, have you thought about it this way? Trying to come at it with a slightly different energy.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, another thing that made me think that Curtis, in particular, is responsible for that BBC Archive YouTube page, is that there's a huge amount of material, Simon, on the the demolishing of the old Victorian houses and the high rises.
Oh yeah.
It's just, I mean, there must be about 20 videos on that. I watched them all.
And derelict.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful stuff. Yeah. So, anyway, have you delved into the BBC archives, Nick?
Well, weirdly, I just did I sometimes get into these extended riffs on my podcast when I'm kind of bored. We were talking about MasterChef, which was a rubbish topic, like the scandals. That I suddenly realized this was boring, so I went into a kind of extended riff about those old BBC archives. I'll put the clip somewhere. Maybe it was on Twitter. And it must be in the Xennial consciousness or something, because I was actually thinking about them as well. Even without watching them, they were just in my mind. Because there was always these well-spoken sort of ordinary English people trying to sound a bit more well-spoken on camera, right? So, well, I just think I'm just not sure about people coming into the country. And they've always sort of got these, there's always like a well-spoken woman who's like, well, I think women should have some right to express themselves. But they're sort of like, they're slightly, they're so reasonable. They're so well-spoken and they seem so nice. And it's just such a simpler time. And they're just always interviewing people, aren't they, with those vox pops, like, well, what do you think about a single immigrant arriving? And then people are like, well, I'm not sure about it, really. I think it's just I worry about the community. And they're so quaint. And like, I want to go back to that England where they're debating some really small problem in a really earnest, sort of well-educated grammar school way, or just, you know what I mean? Like everything, the standards are higher, the problems are smaller. It's so great.
If you watch enough of them, though, you do start to notice the kind of slightly, it's very subtle, but the kind of slightly sneering BBC attitude is there, and it's lingering. It's there. It's kind of like, how can I put it? There's how can I put it this way? You can kind of tell it occasionally that the BBC man is on the side of cosmopolitanism. I'll just put it that way, or is on is a modernizer or something, or has some sort of little agenda. Although I will say there's a lot of stuff that is just flat out reactionary as well. Like those Fife Robertson rants are extraordinary. If you haven't watched them, they're amazing.
Absolutely fantastic. Fife Robinson.
Oh yeah, I meant to watch. Didn't you share a whole 20-minute one on your Twitter?
It was just like he just talks for 22 minutes straight, and just takes every single aspect of Britain to task, and basically says like, it was better in like 1910. Anyway, go on. Simon.
He's kind of like a version of Jack Hargreaves, if people know him as well, who did a program called Out of Town and Old Country. Back in the 70s and 80s, and Fife Robinson is like an accelerated version of him, but he was a guy who would just talk about country life in a very subtle and deceptive way, and he would then sort of break into just short little speeches about how everything was plastic and rubbish nowadays, and you would detect he was sort of very so gently pushing at that door of reaction.
Me and my brother basically watched. I mean, my brother was like, we have to watch, and I was like, come on, it's 4 a.m, I have to go to bed. No, let's do one more. Look at this one. It's about like one of them was called "Have Cars Come Too Far?" And Fife Robinson's got this method, right, of building something up, of being like, oh, isn't it wonderful? Oh, look at these little gadgets. Look at this button. Oh, it's automatic. Like, he builds it up and he builds it up. He builds it up. And then he goes, but do we really need it? And then he starts laying in, and there's a kind of reactionary turn.
It's basically like all of it's like Peter Hitchens sort of just Peter Hitchens stream of consciousness for hours and hours and hours. That reminds me of Hitchens in the Cameron Delusion, where he explains why the motor car is the beginning of the end, and it's so well written. I'm like, he's right. Cars were the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this Robertson character, but I was kind of thinking like maybe this was like the Peter Hitchens of his day or something, because he reminded me quite a bit of the general attitude that he's trying to get back to the Village Green and Dixon of Dock Green and all that sort of stuff. But
I think there's definitely something to explore with that archive stuff, and the way hypernormalization begins is it reminds you of that sort of disjunction. The time is kind of out of joint, as they say in cultural theory. He does this thing with a sort of, it's like a needle drop effect of like VHS tape blur. And he's signaling, this is archived, this is constructed, it's alerting you to the technology, the production, and also how you perceive it's decayed in terms of, the distortion and the artifact, and maybe the truth or the veracity has been distorted as well. But he's never sort of trying to lie to you and say, as people have criticized often and said, well, he's not very historical here, or he's wrong here. Again, he's not constructing a reported reality documentary. He's doing what somebody called a provocative synthesis.
Strange time. Extraordinary events keep happening that undermine the stability of our world. Suicide bombs, waves of refugees, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, even Brexit. Yet those in control seem unable to deal with them. And no one has any vision of a different or a better kind of future.
Pause, please.
This film will tell the
Yeah, that's a ridiculous opening sentence. Sorry, carry on.
as always.
The heel horror. So why is it ridiculous? Why is it ridiculous?
Those things are not like mad things coming out of nowhere. Obviously, that's just a left-wing sort of view of someone who can't understand them, basically.
I don't think he's not really saying they come out of nowhere. I think he's saying the perception is that we're bombarded by these kinds of disruptive events.
Yeah, I didn't want to pause, but since you've already paused, and so it's less embarrassing for me to pause, I just want to add, this is from 2016, right?
Yeah.
And things seemed unreal then to sort of normies like Trump and Brexit, but really Trump has yeah, exactly. Trump has a kind of precedent in Reagan. He's a TV entertainer. It's not really that weird. Brexit, with the pressure from the conservative Eurosceptic wing, and with the fact that as soon as they're asked a question, they're almost bound to say, up yours to Europe. It's not that weird in hindsight, is it? But in 2016, it was like, ooh, things are getting weird. But now they've actually got way weirder, I would argue. But
the way that leftists handled the year 2016 was just to make it sound like it was some like comet that came out of nowhere. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. They were ignoring the forces that led to it, and they thought they could forever, and they were rudely awakened.
I mean, this is part of the phenomenology of hypernormalization that we'll get onto later, is the sudden shocking nature of the collapse, in a sense, culturally. And Curtis has talked about this quite a bit, about the way that these things happened, and then the left turned and looked back at people and said, you're all stupid. And I posted a clip the other day, and he said, at that moment you've just lost people completely. They're never gonna come back to you as an elite. And part of what happens in this period, again, there's a renewal of something that happened really, I guess, in the 70s and the 80s, was that they decided to go into a form of retreat into creating culture as a means of influencing things politically. I mean, it reminds me a little bit. I mean, AA's talked about this thing that Toynbee talks about a kind of cultural retreat.
Yes.
A sort of a hunkering down in order. It's kind of like an extended sulk in a way as well, because it's the left.
I never told this story. Oh, go on, Horace. Go on.
Oh well, just as a parallel with the Frankfurt School as well, they were alarmed and disappointed at the way that standard Marxism failed during the First World War, and obviously the German Social Democratic Party, especially siding with the government rather than with the communist cause, the Marxist cause, and so they saw culture as another attack vector. I think it's quite parallel to that. Like, obviously, what you're describing here, Simon, is a retreat. It's different, but there's a parallel there, I think.
I was just going to say, I've never told this story, but in 2016, when Brexit happened, when the result came out, I was in Stratford-upon-Avon for a Shakespeare conference. And I remember I was walking down the street of Stratford and I stopped. And I actually started crying. I actually shed a tear. And I thought to myself, things are never going to be the same again. And in a strange way, even though I was probably crying for the wrong reasons and thinking about the flat I was trying to sell at the time. In a way, that was right. In a way, it is like the world the world did change quite a bit, I think, from 2000. It hasn't been the same. And I often think that it feels a little bit like sliding doors. Seen that film Sliding Doors? It really does feel like whatever reality track we were all on, let's say, I don't know, I always think back to the 2012 Olympics, right, as a kind of moment, right? But like whatever track anybody was on, it's not the same track now. Like there's no way. I do think that there was something that changed for a lot of people.
You disagree with me and you agree with Curtis. Then that's quite funny to imagine you walking around. That reminds me of Enoch Powell when they gave away India, walked around desolate for an evening in London, sitting in doorways and stuff, just crying because the British would decided to just give away India. Weird factoid for you. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah.
It's true though. I mean, I just cannot imagine going back to the old reality. That there was an old truth regime, an old reality, and it has literally been shattered to the point where things happen on a nearly weekly or daily basis now that would have been just insane back in the old paradigm, which kind of just like they're like water off a duck's back now.
I'm agreeing with that, but I'm saying in a way the hysteria about Trump and Brexit kind of contributed to that. In a way, those could have been taken in stride, whereas now it feels to me like mad stuff does genuinely happen. But maybe you're right. Maybe that was part of it.
Story of how we got to this strange place. It is about how over the past 40 years, politicians, financiers, and technological utopians, rather than face up to the real complexities of the world, retreated.
Pause, please.
Instead, they
Sorry, this is 9 Inch Nails, isn't it, Simon?
Something I Can Never Have by 9 Inch Nails, yeah. So it sort of ties in, underscores that sense of something being lost, especially on the left here, a sense of vision slipping through their fingers.
People need to have the Adam Curtis
track listing,
the tick list, Burial, 9 Inch Nails, John Carpenter. Who else does he play a lot? Brian Eno.
Absolutely, it's all coming. Actually, he does return to a lot of the old stuff. This is an interesting clip here, by the way. You'll see shortly. It's coming down an elevator, which is actually at the Hilton Hotel at LAX Airport, and it's got an information board about a conference that was going on in 2015, and it's kind of just a throwaway shot in a sense. But he focuses on the information board, talking about what meetings are going on that day. And interestingly, one of the ones headed at the top of the list is a meeting of the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is quite interesting when you look into it. It's a national community organizing network established in 1940 by Saul Alinsky.
Great. Our friend, our buddy.
Yeah.
I made an Adam Curtis maker, by the way. Did I show it to you before? Shall I show it to you? Hold on.
Go on.
The Adam Curtis maker.
Is it like a bingo card?
So there's 3 different wheels that you spin, right? So this is the script on the left, and it says Simplified Visions, Rand Corporation. This was a fantasy, but this failed. Okay. Then long corridor
Long
shot,
corridor shot.
off mic moment,
Yeah.
derelict office, dead bodies. 9 Inch Nails, John Carpenter, Brian Eno, Burial.
Very
You
good.
basically just spin those and you'll get Curtis. No. Anyway, let's carry on.
Constructed a simpler version of the world in order to hang on to power. And as this fake world grew, all of us went along with it, because the simplicity was reassuring. Even those who thought they were attacking the system, the radicals, the artists, the musicians, and our whole counterculture, actually became part of the trickery.
Pause.
Containment.
Yeah.
Go on,
I just want to read out something because he talks about this, this notion of fake realities being created. I mean, I just want to quote a tweet from one Nick Dixon from July 17th. The big lie that women's football is now this amazing thing is extraordinary to observe. Soviet levels of mutually agreed fiction. I thought that was a good phrase. Mutually agreed fiction.
I'm always having a go at women's football. Like, people get so angry. They get so angry about it. There's two things you're not allowed to criticize: Reform UK and women's football. And there's quite a
I'm
lot
so
of
excited
crossover.
about the Lionesses.
Oh, I mean, I know Carl's sort of been owning it and saying it's great to see them, with English pride. I'm of the other school that it's all, a kind of, that's the one acceptable nationalism we're allowed because it's kind of lesbian coded and left coded. I'm not buying it at all. But yeah, because you've just got to like it, right? Because I remember it changed. I was in because I do five-a-side football. I've got a five-a-side football team, and one day I went into the pub with them after and said they were talking about the women's football, and I said, "Oh yeah, but the goalkeepers aren't very good, are they?" And they all just looked at me and said, "The goalkeepers have got much better, Nick." And that's when I realized, like, oh, you're not allowed to criticize it. It's so weird. So yeah, I always hammer it on Twitter.
What did you think about the clip of the captain of the team talking about how English blood running in her veins and
well, that's what I'm
got a bit
saying.
excited?
I wasn't buying it. I understand Carl's angle of like, let's just own this and win. I can take that angle. And don't blackpill. I'm blackpilling about it, going like, oh, this is the one thing we're allowed. It used to be the men's football team, and then that went woke. It's like, no, the one thing we're allowed is we're allowed. I mean, even AA said the other day, why is the England shirt left coded? You've got Zara Sultana wearing the England shirt. Therefore, I'm suspicious. Let's say.
I wonder if Andrew Lawrence tweeted about the that comment, the woman talking about English blood. You know how he commented about the penalty takers.
I remember, yes.
Yeah, and Anyway.
AA, I think you're on mute. You
The
are.
question is, how is that linked to Curtis? But we don't know because it's paused.
AA.
Sorry. I put out a tweet. I put out a tweet about this yesterday. I said that the attempt to get women's football over with the people is slowly working. Watching them get memed and so on, unthinkable a few years back. Another regime win. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. And that's what I've been saying. In other words, but yeah, people are like, oh, shut up, Nick. Just enjoy it. I will not.
Yeah.
No, it's rubbish. So no. Yeah,
right, the quality. I mean, there's the
crap.
quality, and then there's the Soviet push that you have to pretend to like it. And there's just
political.
no way. It's solely political. I mean, the fact they're kneeling and the men's team kneel, but they were still kneeling until they got backlash. Till like the quarterfinals, they were still kneeling for a foreign criminal who died of an overdose 5 years ago. It's absolutely insane. And the whole thing is political because it's the quality is like they get beaten by literally teenage boys.
No,
Go on.
All of that fuss over Sadiq Khan being knighted, which obviously was a disgrace. But to me, Gareth Southgate being knighted was as much a disgrace. Is as much. I hate Gareth Southgate. Anyway, carry on, Nick.
No, you're right. That is a disgrace. The men's. Here's my take. The men's football. At least you've got the organic history of it. It was a working class game. It has got a real history with real teams, and you've also got the quality. If you want to celebrate elite quality and say, okay, well, this is kind of globalist in nature, and they're kneeling and it's woke, and I'm being told constantly about racism and Black Lives Matter, that's all disgusting. But at least they can't deny that the quality is a kind of inherent celebration of elitism because it's they're the best in the world, an absolutely incredible level of like discipline and so on. And then, but the women's game, you've got none of that. So if you still have a soft spot for the men's game, but you go, I know it's woke, but I kind of have a soft spot, it's still football. I can live with that. But the women's game is solely political from start to finish.
Yeah. I mean, I made a point about how I thought that sort of very visible moment where she was talking about, English blood running in her veins, and it all felt like a bit of a patriotic surge. It was kind of in counterposition to the David Betts Civil War narrative that's been building up over the last few months of anticipating this possible coming violent chaos. But then she comes in, and this is part of a sort of, a dialectic that's almost being constructed in front of our eyes to say, no, Britain can make it if we all pull together. And it's going to be that sort of plucky kind of Johnny Britt.
And a little release valve after Epping, a little release valve. Oh, look, there is some patriotism. Women's football patriotism? Like, here's your crumb of patriotism.
Yeah.
Women's football, not popular. Therefore, the women are allowed to be a little bit based. Men's football, actually popular. So they have to be woke. See? So they're trying to get the women over. They're trying to get the women more popular, so they're allowed to say things like that. Whereas if Harry Kane came out and said that, it'd be massively controversial, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the women allowed to come in with a steel chair and have a little victory. Sorry, go on.
Oh, just by the way, Harry Kane is one of the worst people. He drives the woke agenda in the team. It's like, it's not just forced. It's like he believes it as well. So there's certain players in each national team that seem to drive it, like Manuel Neuer for Germany. He's like personally proud of driving the rainbow flag agenda and everything.
Really?
Right,
so,
the
it doesn't
rainbow
even all come. Yeah, it doesn't even all come from above. It also comes from certain players as well.
How weird. Then there's always the one based Muslim who won't do it.
Right. In cricket, you always get these controversies in cricket for some reason. I don't know why.
Because they too had retreated into the make-believe world, which is why their opposition has no effect, and nothing ever changes.
See, you just said nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
It's because everybody's on this symbolic plane of shit that doesn't matter.
That's right. And this is the contrast that you'll pick up when it gets to the bit about the film Stalker. The Tarkovsky film is Stalker is the ultimate nothing ever happens bro film. If you understand the sort of the metaphor it's driving at, it's this way we run up to this place where we feel this sense of historical urgency, and we look for solutions, and we can't imagine them. We can't imagine what they might be,
Just imagine if Khrushchev hadn't lied. Anyway, let's carry on.
But this retreat into a dream world allowed dark and destructive forces to fester and grow.
That was a dead body. Just doing my Curtis bingo. Yeah, carry on.
Well, there's a bit of an ambush image there. It's sort of ambiguous because of the brightness transition he does. It looks like it's almost like it's an artistic pose. He's dreaming because he's talking about retreating into a dream world. And you think at first the guy's asleep, and then you see, he's being shot through the face, and there's flies crawling out of his mouth.
I'll just say 47 minutes, 2 minutes, and 1 second into the documentary.
This has to be a record.
I'm blaming Nick.
Hey, I try not to pause it. I'm blaming horrors.
I agree with Nick.
Yeah, the buck stops here. Yeah.
You're owning it.
Yep.
Side. Forces that are now returning to pierce the fragile surface of our carefully constructed fake world.
Okay.
Pause. Just to say that that footage is from a massacre in a Syrian village of Haswiya that took place in 2013. A government militia just basically came down and murdered everyone in the village who were Alawites, who were one of the religious minorities in Syria.
The government militia went after the Alawites?
Yeah. This is the sort of we'll get onto it when we talk about Assad, but there's always been this tension within Syria between the sort of Sunni majority population and the degree of influence of the Alawites over the institutions and the military.
That reminds me, I have to get my phone, Simon, to read out my dad's text, because you wanted to know what my dad thought of Assad. When I go and get my second cigar, I'll pick up my phone as well.
It'll come up when it gets into the cooperation with Iran. Yeah, that will be interesting.
Yeah, if we get that far, it's a big if at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely shot of smeared blood all over the floor. Right?
Yeah.
Now the dead body.
I couldn't find a source for this footage. I don't know what she's...
The
I don't
story
think she's
begins
dead.
in two cities at the same moment in 1975. One is New York, the other is Damascus. It was a moment when two ideas about how it might be possible to run the world without politics first took hold. In 1975, New York City was on the verge of collapse. For 30 years, the politicians who ran the city had borrowed more and more money from the banks to pay for its growing services and welfare. But in the early 70s, the middle class...
Sorry to pause it again, but because I was a Xennial growing up in the 80s playing arcade games, I've always had a thing about graffiti New York.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the game Final Fight. Did anyone play that?
Yeah.
It's just like there's something about it that I struggle to say it's wholesome. There's something better about this graffiti than like modern. Like even the graffiti now is not as good as it was in the late 70s.
Well, you see a clip of later on Patti Smith, and she's talking about how she, in her dreamy way, oh, I love what the kids are doing with all this graffiti. It's fantastic, And Curtis, in a recent interview, talks about he likes Banksy, okay, but he talks about a bit of Banksy graffiti he saw somewhere, and he liked the little joke it contained, which was, Banksy's written on a wall. If graffiti changed anything, they'd make it illegal. And of course, there's a sort of knowingness there. And of course, within a few hours, the council has come and put a protective glass screen on it. It's illegal, but it's valued by the regime.
I also developed a bit of a conspiracy because, all of those arcade games were made by Japanese. Do you think like one tape of the film Warriors got into Japan and all of the Japanese nerds who made the games watched that one film? Because Street Fighter, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, I mean, pretty much all of those games are just set in the world of Warriors. It's just like, was their mental image of America just that one movie? Because they're obsessed with it in the late 80s, early 90s. And they're all Japanese, the guys. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just before we resume, I just wanted to make a note there that he dated the beginning of New York's debt problems, over borrowing problems, to 30 years before 1975. So the end of the Second World War. I don't know if that's a coincidence.
Yeah, essentially, it's developed over the post-war period. There's been a sort of more or less three-stage process of deindustrialization. Businesses have moved out of New York, they've moved overseas, and then there's a sort of middle-class white flight that takes hold in the city. So the tax base shrinks, as he says, and the people left behind essentially are mostly, the poor underclasses, minorities, often very heavily dependent on public services.
Okay, let's carry on. Trying to think of some other awesome films from there. Is there a film called Escape from Precinct?
Assault on Precinct 13.
Isn't that
It's Carpenter.
Carpenter?
Yeah.
That's a cool film.
It's a great film. Yeah.
There's also, I was thinking of Escape from New York as well. I mean,
that's a really cool film.
Yeah, that's Carpenter as well.
Carpenter as well. Yeah.
And that's slightly futuristic, isn't it? It's like a few decades in the future, I think.
It both is, and it's also very present to the time, because, I mean, do you know in Ghostbusters when they're looking for the new Ghostbusters HQ, and they go to the old fire station, and they're sort of having doubts about it, and Spengler says, the neighborhood is like a demilitarized zone. Well, I mean, the thing is, obviously, lots of these neighborhoods were like demilitarized zones at that time for reasons that we'll get onto. But the way New York was kind of imploding under this erosion of its tax-paying population, and you'll see, I mean, especially in some of the footage there that we saw with the lady collapsed on the stoop, the areas like the South Bronx especially, just a lot of it was just burnt to the ground. Because there were these tenement buildings where the landlords realized that the amount of rent they were getting off these poor people would actually be vastly outweighed by the insurance they would get off doing an arson insurance job on the block. So it was kind of called the decade of fire from 1970 roughly to 1980. And I mean, there was also probably just a lot of people just burning places down for the hell of it as well. And one of the problems with the public sector cutbacks was fire stations were shut down. And so they would just let places burn. And funnily enough, our old friends, the Rand Corporation, had been brought in to do a sort of a consultancy on which fire stations to shut. And of course, they'd shut all the ones in the South Bronx. So helping the people out.
But just about Ghostbusters, I do love Egon Spengler's deadpan style of everything. It's just damn funny.
Well, what's the movie, which is just like one long shootout between like the cops and the guys who've taken that kind of compound area? Which is a film I in my mind, Sly Stallone, isn't it? But I could be wrong about that. What is that movie?
Well, that is Assault on Precinct 13, isn't it? Is it? They hunker down in the police HQ and all the badasses roll up and try to spring the convicts.
I'll tell you what. I remember watching that like on a Sunday afternoon or something once, being like, bloody hell, this is a good movie. It was like on TV or something. It's brilliant. Anyway, let's carry on.
Fled from the city, and the taxes they paid disappeared with them. So the banks lent the city even more. But then they began to get worried about the size of the growing debt, and whether the city would ever be able to pay it back. And then one day in 1975, the banks just stopped. The city held its regular meeting to issue bonds in return for the loans, overseen by the city's financial controller.
Just giving everybody a trigger warning, there's a libertarian rant from Horace forthcoming. He'd be like, it was correct, they defaulted on their debts. I can't... Sorry.
Yep.
It's coming though, isn't it? It's coming.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the City of New York is offering for competitive bidding sale 260 million tax anticipation notes, of which 100 million will mature on June 3rd, 1975.
The banks were supposed to turn up at 11 a.m. But it soon became clear that none of them were going to appear. The meeting was rescheduled for 2 p.m. and the banks promised they would turn up.
The announcement on behalf of the controller is that the offer, which we had expected to receive and announce at 2 o'clock this afternoon, is now expected at 4 o'clock.
Paul, does this mean that so far nobody wants those bonds?
We will be making a further announcement at 4 o'clock, and anything further that I could say now, I think, would not advance the interest of the sale, which is now in progress.
Does this mean that you have not been able to sell them so far today?
We will have a further announcement at 4 o'clock.
What happened that day in New York marked a radical shift in power. The banks insisted that in order to protect their loans, they should be allowed to take control of the city. The city appealed to the president, but he refused to help. So a new committee was set up to manage the city's finances. Out of 9...
Would that president have been Gerald Ford in 1975?
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. It was Gerald Ford. I mean, the federal government turned them down, and then they went to the state to Governor Carey, I believe it is.
The state of New York.
The state of New York. That's right. They went to Albany, the capital, and pleaded for funds. And essentially, the deal was that some funding was forthcoming. The city didn't go bankrupt, but it was days away from defaulting. And essentially the conditionalities were that there had to be reforms in the way New York was run. Obviously, it had massive welfare programs, lots of government employees with big feather-bedded pensions. I mean, it was hugely exploited by the Democrats as a kind of honeypot, which just got worse and worse and worse the more it went on, the more they borrowed. And so there had to be a kind of really punitive regime in order to bring New York back into line. A lot of people in the country resented New York. It's like London now.
How many times have the Democrats run New York into the ground? It feels like they've done it like 3 or 4 times already.
Eternally, continually.
Addicted to a kind of losing condition, really.
AA, no need for my rant. Simon's just done it. But what I will add here is that this is going to happen to nations soon. I think by the end of this decade, I think this is going to happen to Britain, maybe Britain first out of all the Western nations.
IMF are already in, mate. IMF
right.
Yeah.
See, this is galloping ahead of me now, right? I'm expecting this to happen maybe next year or the year after, probably by 2028. Don't ask me why. That's back of a fag packet calculations, but I expect this in the next 3 years. And we are talking, when it comes to nations, right? This happened obviously in 2008. That it was like all the banks in each country and all the banks around most of the world all needed bailouts at once, and that was arranged by the states. You know, all the government heads got together. Gordon Brown saved the world, and so on. That's not going to work the next time. The next time they're going to pledge. You know, last time it was like £800 billion or something for Britain and 3 or 5 trillion for America. Next time they're going to need to do amounts probably like 10 times bigger, and then we really will have, like, as if it's not bad enough already, we will have runaway inflation. Then we're talking, 100% inflation in a month or something. God knows, just runaway. Like, it will become meaningless. Money will become worthless. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's what the world is facing in the next 5 years.
So Oswald Spengler's answer to this would be, okay, well, it's time for force to take control of the money power. So then vote in Jeremy Corbyn and nationalise the banks. Fuck them. That's what Hitler did. That's what Hitler did. Yeah. Did he not? That was the German miracle in the 30s.
Yeah, they just sort of monopolised inflation, you could say. Yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying is structurally that is what has happened historically. So, I mean,
it's not a solution.
Do we think that? Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is all of that is contingent on the notion that the banks are sovereign, or that the most important thing in the world is the bottom line of the debt obligations to this bank or that bank. Well, what if every country just turns around and say, well, no, what's more important is us, and you and whose army. I mean, it's basically what it comes down to at the end of the day.
So there's just not
it'd be contingent on the American army coming in on the side of the bankers, basically.
Right. So you can nationalise banking. Let's say they do that. They just create one state monopoly bank or whatever. But there's still, like, what do they do to have money? Do they just create money? Do they just get the state monopoly bank to create money? So you still got the effect that I said a second ago.
I mean, if you just go back to your economic theory 101, what is money? It's just a symbol of exchange, right? It's a symbol of,
it's a convention, yeah.
It's a right. So you just say, well, look, this symbol has gone awry. It's broken. So we'll just start again. And because it's just, the real economy is always the actual stuff, right? The actual machines, the actual goods and services, the people.
That means
and
so you create a new money then, but then everything denominated in the old money, what happens to that? Like, what happens to, say, all the pensions that all the oldies, literally, people who are 90 when this happens, that they're living off, they rely upon? What happens to them? What happens to that?
Well,
I don't know if anyone's got the answer.
You'll have to go back and read like Schacht and see what he did, basically.
Right. The thing is with Hitler's regime, though, is that never really got tested because people. It wasn't Schacht himself. It was someone who worked immediately under Schacht in one of the BBC documentaries. Said, what you must understand is the war kind of hid the fact that we were just living on borrowed time. Like, we were just creating money. There was no plan for what would happen in the 40s and 50s monetarily. We were just presumably going to have massive inflation and probably some sort of crisis and a massive contraction. Like, the state would have just suddenly had to stop doing what it was doing. That never eventuated because the whole regime was just destroyed. But we never got to know really what the cost of that German miracle was. It wasn't really a miracle, as far as I understand. It was just delay the problems till the 40s or 50s, right? Probably the 40s. And then probably just some sort of disaster. And that is what the whole world's going to have now in the next few years, I expect. So all the things do not, like all the people's bank accounts, some people still have bank accounts and stuff, like with actual money in the black, and pensions, they are all, in pounds. If you create the new pound, what happens to them? If you don't wipe them out, you're not really resolving the problem.
Didn't they just, people have to correct me if I'm wrong, because I've not really studied this area that well, but didn't they just say, oh yeah, there's the Reichsmark now, and so all the old money is null and void, Now there's this
Yeah,
new currency, and
the
you know,
Renton mark. Yeah,
what was
that
it called? Sorry,
the Renton mark.
the
Replaced
Renton mark,
yeah.
and you know, this is the new exchange rate. Well,
That
you
was
know,
in
whatever.
24. That was in 1924.
Didn't the Germans bring in their? Didn't the mid-century Germans bring in a new currency again? Because I mean, they had literally hyperinflation. They were literally wheelbarrowing money to buy bread in the 1930s. So they must have started again.
No, I think that the actual hyperinflation problem was resolved in the 20s, like to some degree. Like it was resolved enough that, yeah, under Hitler, it was more just like, you could say normal financing, but massive amounts of spending and nowhere near enough tax. So
here's a shovel, go and dig the road.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it was kind of Keynesian. Yeah, yeah. And if you look at there's a documentary, I think it's The Nazis: A Warning from History. I think it was that one. BBC. It's not that great, but like there is a section where they sort of address this, and the guy says, "Yeah, we were just sort of putting all the costs onto some books that no one was looking at." I don't know how to describe it. Like there was some sort of paper money system where basically just no one was paying. Things were getting paid for, but it wasn't coming out of anyone's account, but it would have to later. I can't describe the exact arrangement, but they were just forestalling the problem. They were not addressing it. They were not paying for the production that they were bringing about.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is that if you just say, well, the economy is there to serve the people, the economy exists to serve us human beings. So if it's not working out, if it's got to a situation where everybody's in theory to debt, you just you rearrange, as Louis Althusser would say, the imaginary relations between individuals and the material world, because that's all these are, and just say, well, none of that stuff exists anymore. There's a new arrangement now.
Yeah, he was a Marxist. He's a communist, right?
Yeah, but
Stalinist and that.
You understand what I'm saying?
But he doesn't mind wiping out the old world. But I'm saying, like, so everything that's denominated in the old money goes to zero.
Well, what I'm saying, Horace, is that if you think about Ludwig von Mises and all of the libertarians, right, they say, oh, well, there are two ways of allocating resources. There's exchange and there's force. Because of reasons, we can't go to force. That's not allowed because of the NAP or some bullshit. So we have to stick to just this one way of doing things. But in reality, force is always on the table. And if it ever got to the situation where literally every single country was in this crisis, the people of the world would just say, well, yeah, fuck the old system. We'll just have a new one. Start again.
You said all
surely that's what will happen, right?
You say all the people who rely on money denominated in the, things denominated in the old money, they're going to accept that. But they're just going to starve or what? I don't mean that I've got the answer to this. I can't actually figure it out, all the permutations, but nobody is answering the questions that are going to be posed at the moment that this happens. Like that, nobody's actually addressing them all. Like pensioners do rely, like pensions are largely in government bonds. That's what I'm saying. And we're talking about what just happened here in New York, or nearly happened. Sorry, is actually going to happen to whole countries, maybe the whole world. As in, there's nobody lending to the states, and states rely on lending. So states are going to suddenly, and it is going to be abrupt, they're going to suddenly have to stop spending most or all of what they spend. I mean, we literally could see the evaporation of the state, or at least most of it. We could just see things, so you're right, things may just revert to force, but we're going to be talking about just a gang of brigands. The state will just reduce to a gang of a few hundred brigands.
Or I mean, you could go another way. You could say, well, Amazon, that's the state now. I don't know. What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, if you see the large and main system as one big thing, the distinction between the public and the private becomes moot after a certain point. So you say, well, actually, all the assets of Amazon, Apple, Google, Elon Musk, whatever, we're just going to use that as the new kind of basis for ruling things. And they're already moving in that direction. It's basically what Tony Blair's trying to do. Tony Blair is literally just trying to get massive corporations to fund public works. It's basically what the public-private partnership is. But the cost of it is that they then get access to your data and your details and basically become a kind of de facto government.
Yeah.
That's probably what they're going to try to do first. I would imagine
So,
more likely than Zara Sultana nationalising the Goldman Sachs or something.
In an England, in an England press, sure. But yeah, like, so say the plan is to just nationalise all of Elon Musk's wealth. Yeah, fine, they might try that. So that means nationalising Tesla and X and whatever, and just liquidating what you can, or in some way extracting what value you can from it. Is that what you envision?
No. I don't think they'll go to the trouble of nationalising it. They'll just fudge it, so it will be like a kind of a hazy.
Compel it to do.
Right. It's this grey area between they already do it, right? So if the government contracts out or signs a deal with Oracle or Palantir or Apple, right, or Microsoft, at that point, when those corporations have access to literally every single person's data and they are doing the functions of the government, can you really still talk about public or private, or like it's this
No, I agree.
thing? You understand what I'm saying? Or if you look at pension funds, right? Well, I mean, BlackRock and State Street and the other one, Vanguard, they own practically everything. But if you look like, well, who is it who owns it? It's pension funds. Who owns pension funds? That these are the pensioners that you're talking about, right? Who hold, the firemen and teachers and so on and so forth. So, in a weird way, the quote unquote private becomes another a kind of secondary public. Does that make sense? Like,
I agree. Yeah. And like the corporations are incorporated in all sorts of ways into the purposes of the state, if not formal ownership. Sure, yeah, I agree with that. And banks, that's truer of banks than any other corporations, right? There's a mutual reliance between banks and states, because states want to spend much more than they just get from tax, so they use borrowing from the banks, right? As in they get banks to buy their bonds, right? But as we saw, there's times when the banks consider that too risky. They don't believe they're going to get paid back at all, even the interest maybe, and so they just stop buying the bonds because it's just a terrible investment. Even though it's one of the safest investments there is, it just becomes a bad investment for them, right? Because they fear not getting repaid. But that's going to happen in the next few years on a global scale to nations.
And you're right, it's already happening. It's already happening.
Right,
here.
it's already happening. We got Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, who's an idiot, and so on, right? It's going to get worse. And there's no solution this time, except probably they just try to print tens, hundreds of trillions, quadrillions, whatever, and there's going to be hyperinflation. And you literally might, it's mad to say, but you might see the state cease to exist because it can't get money from anywhere. Nobody will lend to it. Nobody will buy government bonds. That's what I think. I should have just said it in that short way.
We'd just like to reassure our audience that Nick Dixon will be making some dick jokes in a few minutes' time.
Well,
also, I've said enough for now. So
I've sat this one out because I've got an MA in English literature. But if you want to know about postmodern American fiction, hit me up.
Do you know what? Do you know who might have a contribution to this? Who I think thinks the same as me is Dan Tubb. I think he roughly agrees on this. And also, yesterday you had a question about Gavin Bobby. He also talked about this. He's only got a small channel, but he talks about the same scenario. I agree with him, and I think Dan Tubb. So they may put it in better terms. Yeah.
Can I say one ignorant thing? I've got no idea if you're right or wrong because I don't have the expertise. My brother had all the economic ability it has, but aren't libertarians always predicting hyperinflation? Like people like Peter Schiff and everyone. They said lockdown must lead to hyperinflation, but it hasn't happened yet. That's my 2 cents.
And gold is going to go to $100,000, and
yeah. There has been inflation, but it wasn't hyperinflation since COVID. But you see, my conspiracy, Nick, is that Boris wave was designed to soak up the money, quantitative easing with people. I still believe
that giving Boris. I know I don't want to be the Generation X. Everything's incompetence, but isn't that giving Boris way too much credit?
Well, the thing I look at is every nation did a big injection of every nation that did big printing under COVID also brought in an unprecedented amount of people. So if Boris had acted alone, but like Canada had one, Joe Biden did it, pretty much every country in Europe had a spike of immigration just after COVID. And I'm like, well, why was that? It's probably because they all did furlough schemes, and the exchange between money and people, the ratio had been altered, so they needed to up the demand side, up the people side. And even if you're bringing in a Deliveroo driver who's semi-legal with an L plate on, he still has to like eat, right? He still has to spend money, and every single one of those people you bring in is worth X amount of sandwiches in the economy, and that's all GDP is at the end of the day.
So doesn't Boris quasi admit to this? But he says it's about productivity post-COVID or something. He admits it's COVID related, that he sort of overdid it. So, but he's sort of quasi admitting it, but maybe not quite to the same degree you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I just think that the inflation would have been a lot steeper had they not upped the demand side.
So you're saying Boris is a genius, an economic genius?
No, I'm saying that he probably had people from the Treasury and the Bank of England and so on,
right.
Economists telling him like, well, if you don't do this, you're going to get like, huge inflation, and it's going to be on your watch. So what's it going to be? Massive immigration or massive inflation? And he chose immigration.
That's a good question. What would have been worse, wheelbarrows of money fighting in queues for bread, or the Boris way?
Yeah, the first one. The first one was still better. It would have brought us all together. We were all in the Blitz spirit again,
Just to address, I'm not sure of the relationship between. I don't think that the immigration was to reduce monetary inflation, price inflation. But just to address the one thing you said, after COVID, yeah, there was inflation, but not hyperinflation, as you said. Okay. But the distinction there, just to be clear, is inflation in that formulation is just suffering for us. Like your food doubling in price in a few years or whatever. That's not a problem for the government. Hyperinflation is when the government considers it a problem, as in basically they stop getting tax money, I guess. Like people just stop working or stop buying things. Everyone just resorts to barter, stealing, off the book stuff, whatever, which is probably what will happen if there's hyperinflation. But then it's a problem for the government, and then they acknowledge it as a problem. But otherwise they don't. Otherwise they say there's no problem.
All right, 1 hour 17 in, 5 minutes and 36 into Hypernormalation. This is going well, Simon. Even better than
excellent results. I'm very pleased.
9 members, 8 of them were bankers. It was the start of an extraordinary experiment where the financial institutions took power away from the politicians and started to run society themselves. The city had no other option. The bankers enforced what was called austerity on the city, insisting that thousands of teachers, policemen and firemen...
Isn't that Beverly Hills, what was that show called? Those Police Academy. Wasn't that the guy who could do the guy who could do the voices in the big one?
Michael Winslow.
yeah, that was it, yeah.
was sacked. This was a new kind of politics. The old politicians believed that crises were solved through negotiations and deals.
Pause. I just want to say, Adam Curtis couldn't find any grim and alienating footage of the New York subway in the 70s, so he just cut in some footage of London Underground in 2025 there.
Nice. Tom Hardy needs to clean that up.
I just wanted to add that, obviously, so AA does the standard... Curtis, does the standard leftist formulation of austerity there. So it makes it sound like ideological or just contempt for the poor. What it actually is, obviously, the bankers who are very doubtful about lending, getting calls from the government saying, we need you to lend. They're saying, right, let us look at the books. What is it you're spending all this money on? We need to see it. Like, we need to see what you can reduce. Otherwise, it's crazy for us to lend. So they look at it. What are the biggest items? All these things that he lists. So that's why they do it. It's not like hatred of public services or whatever. That's where all the money's going.
Yeah, I'm not sure
he's being...
Yeah, I'm not sure he's being very fiercely ideological there. Obviously he's talking about austerity and layoffs, and the fares on the subway went up, and there were wage freezes and all these kinds of things. But I mean, what his point essentially is, it's the hypernormalisation here was that this vision of a system built on the ideals of public governance gave way to sort of financialized management and technocratic control for efficiency, etc., as a kind of mode that people couldn't imagine any other solution.
It turned out there were conditions. It turned out there were consequences to borrowing.
Yeah.
All I know is that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Let's carry on.
A completely different view. They were just the representatives of something that couldn't be negotiated with. The logic of the market. To them, there was no alternative to this system. It should run society.
Just by shifting paper around, these slobs can make $65 million in a single transaction. That would take care of all of the layoffs in the city. So it's reckless, it's cruel, and it's a disgrace.
There'd be a fair number of bankers, of course, who'd say, well, it's the unions who have been too greedy. Now, what would your reaction be to that?
I guess they're right in a way. If you can make $60 million on a single transaction and a worker makes $9,000 a year, I suppose they're correct. And as they go back to their little estates in Greenwich, Connecticut, I want to wish them well, the slobs.
Pause.
Pause there. That guy would play himself in the Coen Brothers movie. Do you know what I mean? That guy's so hilarious. He's like, you give me the hi hat, you slob. I can't believe he's real.
He is Victor Gottbaum. He was basically a union leader. He ran a union called DC 37, and I mean it's rich sort of him talking that way, because I mean essentially he was very much in hoc to the mafia, the Gambino and the Colombo crime families sort of sent their guys in to kind of deal with union matters, and Gottbaum sort of used to bring them in more or less as muscle. And they oversaw a lot of graft that was going on from the mafia families who would raise money, like there was $1 million raised for the governor's campaign in 1974 for election. Mario Cuomo got 50 grand off them, for going for state mayor. There was this guy Anthony Scotto who was kind of he represented the longshoremen, or we would call them dockers. Essentially he was a convicted extortionist. so I mean these were all the kinds of guys that Gottbaum was involved with. I mean, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. It's quite funny. There's an article I'll post up later on, but he's talking about what a wonderful relationship he had with all the mafia guys and how much he loved them, and
Who's that?
Gottbaum, this guy we've just saw on the screen, Victor Gottbaum.
Oh, he talks about the mafia.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a kind of go-between essentially for them to get in and control public services. Right. But I mean, essentially, they'd be doing all kinds of horrendous things. I mean, they would, well, anyway, I'll put the article up and people will be able to see. But I mean, it essentially, him. It's kind of sort of going, as they said, the sliding doors thing. Curtis is presenting the bankers as an alternative logic of the markets to run society, and you think that's sort of quite tendentious in a kind of left-wing sort of way. That must be bad. But then you contrast that with what Gottbaum represents, which was the old ways of patronage and a very similarly unaccountable power of that you couldn't negotiate with.
Just to add to that, you can get the story from the other end. There's a ex-mafia guy called Michael Franzese, Franzese, and he says the same thing. Right, he was taken out. He left the mafia life, I think, in the late 80s. But he said, like, they also all the ex-mafia guys who are on YouTube now, which is funny content. They all say, the 70s was a great time. Yeah, like we started getting serious trouble in the late 70s, early 80s sort of thing, like when the RICO laws and whatever. But before, in the 70s, they were having a great time. And it was especially the time when I think Carlo Gambino died in about 75. Paul Castellano took over, and he specialized in union control, like extorting the construction industry, especially. And they were making I think the Gambino family alone were making tens of millions a month from this stuff. It was, and that's in them days money as well. And they say that Mario Cuomo. Well, Francis says, yeah, like whoever we tried to buy off everyone, right? But we had 10-1 better luck with the Democrats than the Republicans. And he says Mario Cuomo was just our guy. Yeah, he was just our friend.
Yeah. I mean, when Gottbaum was when you see him here, 74, 75, they put up a mural depicting all these kind of blue-collar union guys who had known ties to the Colombo crime family. And they were all dressed up in this mural, like 30s gangsters with machine guns leaning against a car. And there was a motto underneath that said, "Join the union or else." So it was pretty blatant. And Gottbaum would just say, "Oh, it could be that. I don't know. I don't recall."
The slobs.
I don't want to be too contrarian here, but I can't help but notice that you can basically have a look at when the RICO Act was passed in 1970, and the New York crime rate skyrockets after that point. So my long-running thesis that the mafia reduces the crime rate. When the mafia was at its peak in New York in the 40s and the 50s, the crime rate was lower than in the mid-1980s. So
Ronnie and Reggie, they loved their mums. The streets were safe.
there was true social bonds between the dons and the people in a way that there wasn't between the bankers and the people.
And by the way, the RICO Act was not used against organised crime for a while after being passed. I think it was Rudolph Giuliani who started using it against the mob. Before that, it was in abeyance for some years, I think. When he became the Attorney General or whatever of New York, he started using it against them, and it was very successful. The mafia really got smashed up in the 80s, but they had a great time before that.
Yeah, what do? You smash up the monopoly of violence, and then you let anarchy run wild. Little Notorious B.I.G. there, smashing up shops and things, and then you get a massive crime spike. So in a way, the mafia reduced the crime rate. Anyway, let's carry on.
But the extraordinary thing was, no one opposed the bankers. The radicals and the left-wingers, who 10 years before had dreamt of changing America through revolution, did nothing. They had retreated and were living in the abandoned buildings in Manhattan. The singer Patti Smith later described the mood of disillusion that had come over them. "I could not identify with the political movements any longer," she said. "All the manic activity in the streets. In trying to join them, I felt overwhelmed by yet another form of bureaucracy." What she was describing was the rise of a new, powerful individualism.
Sorry to pause this, but have I ever told you my Patti Smith story?
No.
Simon?
Go on.
My book, Shakespeare's Moral Compass, starts with a quotation by Patti Smith, where she says, "Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not mine. My sins, my own, they belong to me. And I use this as a launch pad to attack the me generation, to attack kind of individualism and selfishness and the loss of old morality. And I was in contact with a professor at the time who also was working on Shakespeare and morality. And it turned out he was a massive Patti Smith fan. And he sent me, like when he was looking over like the manuscript of the book and things, he sent me like a massive essay, like defending the honor of Patti Smith and saying like, this is like, is this anti-Western? Like, what are you doing? Like attacking Patti Smith, so on. Like he was like a boomer professor who got very angry at the fact that I'd started with Patti Smith. I didn't remove it though. If you pick up Shakespeare's Moral Compass, it still starts with that quote from Patti Smith. So, but he was trying to argue that Smith had a more complicated relationship with the subject matter than I was trying to make out there. So, anyways.
I don't know much about her other than her classic album. In '75, what was it, Horses? And apart from that, she seems insufferable. But I could be wrong. She could be lovely. but I don't know enough about her.
That could not fit with the idea.
It is a good album, though.
Yeah.
Because the Night is her biggest hit. That's written by Springsteen, of course.
Ah.
Because the night. I'm just here for the pop trivia, as I said.
Yeah. Chuck it in.
Horses was massively. You know when you buy like Uncut magazine and Rolling Stone and stuff, and Enemy and all that sort of stuff. I always remember Horses was always made the top 10 lists, so I was kind of browbeating into getting it. And to be fair, it was a very good album, good album.
And she
I
was
I like the big opener. Was it Gloria? It's like 10 minutes long. Brilliant song.
Which was a Van Morrison cover, but as I understand, but she changed it a lot. I'm pretty sure. I know I could be wrong. I had it as well.
Was that the same Gloria as Laura Branigan did? Gloria, da da da.
Very different.
No, it's a different one. Yeah.
It's Van Morrison. And here you go. AI on Google says Smith transformed Van Morrison's original into a lesbian love song. Didn't know it was about lesbians. I take it back. I didn't know
it was about lesbians either.
Describing a passionate encounter with a woman named Gloria. I don't think that's true, is it?
I always thought it was more
assuming.
Yeah, I always thought it was more esoteric in meaning, but
I don't believe that. That was that's imagining that like the singer's just singing to Gloria herself, but that's very sort of basic assumption. I don't believe that.
Idea of collective political action. Instead, Patti Smith and many others became a new kind of individual radical who watched the decaying city with a cool detachment. They didn't try and change it, they just experienced it.
Look at that, isn't that cool? I love that, where like kids write all over the walls. That to me is neater than any art sometimes. Jose and Maria forever. There's a lot of things like when you pass by big movie houses, maybe we'll find one, but they have little movie screens where you can see clips of like Z or something like that. People watch it over and over. I've seen people, I've checked them out all day. I've gone back and forth and they're still there watching the credits of a movie because they don't have enough dough, but it's some entertainment,
Instead,
that just sounds incredible. Can I pause for a second? That just sounds incredibly lame. I mean, have you found one thing I've noticed? You may not agree. Like anything that's like a cutting edge trend, or like, hey, Patti Smith being cool in New York, it just seems incredibly lame later on. It's a bit like the futurists. Any artists tend to be the first onto new trends, right? But then those trends just become sort of basic technology. So like the futurists are like, oh, fast moving vehicles. But in hindsight, doesn't it look a bit lame? I mean, isn't this kind of like just garbage what Patti Smith's talking about? People in movie theaters.
Yeah. Yep. She reminds me of my first girlfriend. A girl called Annalise. Very, very similar. Yeah. But just interesting point for AA as well here.
She was fun though, Simon, wasn't she? Sorry. You don't have to answer that.
I remember her father had no hand. He'd blown it off with explosives at some point. But anyway, just an interesting point here, though, is, as you say, I mean, I don't judge her as an artist because she's very significant in that sense. But also this point in 75, as I talked about, the hollowing out in the South Bronx that goes on, does lead to the emergence of hip-hop.
Every cloud?
There you go.
I honestly, I reckon it was probably quite. I reckon if you were there on the ground, it was probably quite cool, New York in that year.
What sort of year did hip hop first appear? Like the very first sort of track?
It was around the mid 70s, and then I think Malcolm McLaren seemed to pick up on it in the sort of early 80s, I think, and then
it was a street phenomenon first, but then they got them into the recording studios.
Yeah.
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and the Sugar Hill Gang and the Mel and they're such luminaries.
And the way the story is told is essentially, because of the literal destruction of the South Bronx, it was a kind of activist method of reclaiming space. People get their bits of cardboard out and do their routines on the sidewalk and create some joyous art form out of the desperate edge they were living on.
So hip hop might have been someone with just like a tape player or something and just started doing early rapping or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes a cappella. That's another Gen X thing, by the way. they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a real hip hop fan. I'm into Africa Bambaataa." Oh yeah, brilliant.
I was going to ask, yeah, was he
Brilliant,
not OG then?
Yeah, Africa Bambaataa was one of the originals. Yeah.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah. Gen Xers love to use it as a badge of authenticity. That's the real thing. Whereas I maintain it had its creative and cultural high point when it was at its most gangster, most violent in the early 90s.
Greetings,
mid-90s,
fellow hip-hop appreciators.
Yeah. I told you when I went to see Wu-Tang Clan in Brixton straight after work, and I was wearing pinstriped shirt and black trousers, and literally every other person there was in a hoodie and black and smoking dope. And I was like, have I made a mistake? I went on my own as well. But I was like right there. And then there was a DJ set at the start. And I was on my own, right? And I was right at the front getting like crushed on the railings. And when they started, I was like, well, I'm going to have to so I started making a bit of chat with some of the young youths that were there and educating them. I was like, oh, that's Gangsta. You're not familiar with their works and things like that. Quite an experience. And Wu-Tang Clan, I'm not kidding you, we're about 2 hours late to the gig, which apparently is quite... So I was like, I'm going to have to get my train home. It's like 11 o'clock. They're still not here. Are they going to fucking come out or what? So anyway, that was my Wu-Tang.
You must have looked like Michael Douglas in Falling Down, just there in a full suit, like as if you're there to like beat them with a baseball bat or something.
Yeah. It was quite an experience, that. But to be fair, I didn't get any problems.
Any guff.
And they seem to appreciate my level of hip hop knowledge. So there we go.
I probably thought you were a record company manager.
Yeah. I thought you were the boss.
Yeah.
You paid the cost to be the boss.
Invisible force field of hip hop knowledge. What with Wu-Tang? Milo's friend Martin Shkreli, the sort of alt farmer bro. Isn't he the guy who bought that? Didn't they make this one? They cut literally one disc of a single
and he
version
bought it. Yeah. Yes, that's right. And then he was boasting online that he was the only person in the world who had it.
So nobody else has heard it at all.
I think he started playing like bits of it when he was in jail or something. But I don't think any. Do you know they copied that idea, or that idea had been done before by the Residents, who were a very strange kind of counter act. The guys with the eyeballs on their heads.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of like Deus. It's that kind of weird. No, do I mean Deus? Anyway, yeah, weird.
Sort of avant-garde, pop.
In fact, there's a whole Deepest Law on the Residents, and there's a whole Deepest Law on Wu-Tang. So if you're interested in either of these topics, I have esoteric deep dives into both acts. So there we go.
Now.
But yeah. It's still free online. Deepest Law's never been behind the paywall, so
which is a good thing.
As a means of expressing their criticism of...
I'm seeing Tim Westwood mentioned. I also went to a student radio awards, right? And Tim Westwood was there because I used to be involved in student radio. I've told you this before, Simon. I ran the arts thing for 2 years or even 3 years running. And there was even an attempt to remove me from the position due to the fact that I banned basically all arts output, all drama, everything, and reduced the entire arts output to a 2-hour review show on a Sunday. I refused to let it be anything else.
You were an absolute tyrant.
During that, we the station was up for some awards, and we went to the National Student Radio Awards, and Tim Westwood was there. And I'll just say the things they say about him are true, because he was a very grabby kind of,
tactile, friendly guy. Allegedly.
He just straight start feeling a girl's ass, or he was just like, very touchy feely fellow. So there we are.
Can I just quickly say, for my own pride, I very quietly said that the Residents reminded me of Deus, but I meant Devo. Sorry, just got the
Devo. The Residents are quite a varied act. They've got some bits that sound a little bit like Devo, I suppose, but they're a lot weirder than Devo. I just apropos. Did you ever meet Tim Westwood, Nick, in your
No,
kind of
but I
travels?
refute. I don't want to be associated with your defamatory allegations, obviously, because I've been on
Absolutely.
TV. I'm Ofcom trained, so can we just say there's no proof of that? And I'm offering
Yes.
balance, and it was satire.
Well,
Scurrilous
all I'll say is that
allegations.
allegedly, according to the young women that
Thank
I
you.
knew at the time, he was a little bit grabby. That's all I seem to remember. You know,
Because I know he listens to the stream, so I just want to be, get that
Tim,
Well-
if you're watching, mate, I love it. If you're wondering who Tim Westwood is, if you remember my Scorcher ad, he is the Scorcher. He is this guy. That is Tim Westwood. That is Tim Westwood. So,
he was ubiquitous during my sort of teenage years. You know, you just everywhere back home from school or whatever, you're just hearing him on the radio, aren't you? Just with his kind of faux black accent introducing hip hop.
Hey guys, yeah, what's up, yo?
Yeah, absolutely
yeah.
embarrassing even at the time.
Could he have a right of reply if he's annoyed about these remarks? Like, could he come on?
I
The Deepest
think
Law?
he
It doesn't have to be the Deepest Law.
I think it became like a national scandal, didn't it?
Oh.
Didn't Tim Westwood didn't he get? Wasn't that in the news and stuff that he? Yeah, there were 18 women have accused him in 2022 of unwanted sexual behavior from 1992 to 2017.
What I'm hearing is he's a victim of the Me Too movement.
Right. Yeah. But I think in his case, you know, there was a lot of stories that went around about him being a bit like that. While we're on this subject, Nick, of people, have you ever met Stuart Lee and Richard Herring?
Well, Stuart Lee I met in a shop when I used to work in Foyle's bookshop, which is London's oldest bookshop, and I just met him on the till and sort of gushed embarrassingly because I liked his comedy at the time. Herring cancelled me when I got cancelled in the comedy industry. He was one of the many people that piled on. I don't know.
Right.
I got minorly cancelled because someone wouldn't book me because I was a straight white man. I didn't even care, but someone tried to get me a gig on my behalf, just being nice. But the booker wouldn't book me because I was a straight white man and was foolish enough to write this down. So I shared it with all identifying information taken out and just said, you know, why can't I be judged on the content of my character? Some sort of like comparing myself to Martin Luther King. And anyway, it blew up in the Daily Express got hold of it, and then Chortle, which is this horrible comedy blog, got hold of it. Suddenly, the whole comedy world piled on me. People I've been really nice to, like Jason Manford, who I thought I got on with, like buried. I had hardly any followers. You know, all these people buried me, and Herring was one of the many people that sort of buried me at my lowest. First ever time I've been cancelled. You know, the first time you've been cancelled and you're not used to it, and it's kind of a horrible. I couldn't sleep for like 3 days. I got like someone knocked on my door, and I thought it was like someone from the internet. Like I was half awake. You know, it was just kind of like. It's a weird experience the first time. Now I'm just sort of cancelled every week. But like, you know, I've had Hope Not Hate hit pieces and all sorts. I'm in the culture war. But at the time, it was a bit new. It was quite horrible. The whole comedy world piled on me. Some defended me. And Herring was one of the ones that did that. So basically, he's dead to me forever.
I found the tweet, by the way, Nick. It was in 2021. He got 1,200 likes, which is not that big, to be honest. That's a standard day for me on Twitter, you know, to get that sort of, so it's not like a huge tweet. And he has quoted the Chortle comedy thing where you've said, I lost a gig because I'm a straight white male and it happens to us all, says comic Nick Dixon. And Richard Herring simply said, when will there be a gig for men?
Oh, is that what he did? I never looked at it because I had a thing was like, I will
which is actually quite a funny comment from
right.
Richard
Okay,
Herring, I have to say.
I muted it. I muted everything, so I didn't look at it. Okay, maybe it was fairly minor. It's basically just about these high-profile acts sort of sticking the boot in when you're at a low moment. But maybe that's not that bad then. That's good. I didn't even know he'd said that because people just told me he'd sort of piled on. Maybe he said something. I think didn't he elsewhere just say I was shit though. I think someone told me that. But
I didn't. Well, to be honest, I haven't done like a deep dive into it. But,
you should do a deep dive. You shouldn't. There's another one. Someone told me he said worse, but I don't know. Oh well, maybe I'll have to see. That's when I dropped my beef against even Constantine because he defended me in that time, which probably won't be popular on this stream. So I was like, well, he defended me, you know. So I was like, that took some character. So I don't know. Anyway, but to answer your question, I have worked with Richard Herring. Yes, is actually the short answer. But then he did that, so he's dead.
Is he still doing that crazy thing he does where he plays snooker against himself?
I don't know. That was years ago, wasn't he? He had his podcast. I doubt it, to be honest with you, but I can't confirm.
If that's still going, he should be probably certified. Let's have a look. It's
I
Richard
don't
Herring.
think so. He had a much bigger podcast at the Leicester Square Theatre. That I think that's still going.
It's the world's longest running snooker podcast. Because I remember I was an avid fan of Lee and Herring.
So was I.
He's still doing it.
Wow.
Fucking it, he's played 168 frames against himself.
That is insane.
Fucking hell.
See, they were funny. They were funny in the 90s. Them two.
They were good growing up. Yeah, and one of the strange things about obviously doing comedy for 11 years is meeting these people and realizing they're all awful.
Yeah.
I really used to rate Stuart Lee. I thought he did some genius jokes back before he just went unfunny.
Yes, well, I think he is funny. But it's the technique I'm admiring in a sense more than the individual. I mean, I met him once briefly at the BAC in the bar, and he was very standoffish and, you know, not.
I'm still a Stuart Lee fan because what I share with him is just a loathing of humanity.
Well, Curtis in one of the interviews, actually, he says something very resonant with it. Because, you know, when we did the short films, and this will come up later because it'll talk about Vlad Surkov, you know, the Russian impresario who helped Putin coordinate Russian politics. Curtis refers, in a sense, to Stuart Lee, you know, sideways in a way, because this is the basis of Stuart Lee's act. Curtis says, as you are attacking an audience, you are also grooming them.
Yes.
Just on Stuart Lee, I might have said this to Simon, but maybe this is just some comedy insider stuff. But when you do comedy for like a decade, you end up having more respect for people who hide the artifice more than foreground it. So I was always very impressed by his stuff. It is still good, obviously, but I was very impressed by when I didn't do comedy. But the more I did comedy, the more I had a sort of weird respect for like the Michael McIntyres who make it look like they're not doing anything when they are, whereas Stuart Lee is he's foregrounding the technique.
This is a thing that comes up in acting as well, actually. I mean, classically, a lot of actors go from wanting to hide themselves in costumes and makeup and disguises, and eventually sort of tending to strip all that away as their career goes on, and they feel, you know, a better, performer when they do away with the artifice.
Do you know what I'd love to do? Just thinking out loud, depending on how much time Nick has in the future, I'd love to get Nick on again on a non-Curtis related thing, and just watch that 70s show, the 1970s comedian show, like Ken Goodwin and Jim Bowen and stuff, and basically like watch it with you reviewing what they're actually doing, like deconstructing the 1970s comedians, because I have a kind of
racism.
I just have a morbid interest in that crew. I mean, everybody talks about their racism, but
just kidding.
I just like their kind of their little verbal tics. They're obviously doing something. I love the fact they laugh at their own jokes. They get no reaction, and then they just cover it by laughing at their own jokes and things like that. So.
Yeah, I did that when I did stand up, but that evolved naturally over many years. You evolve these techniques from being on stage that are kind of survival mechanisms, and they become part of your act. It sort of all happens naturally from being on stage. You know, loads and loads. I was telling Simon things that you don't think about as a viewer, as a normal punter, are really like heightened on stage. Like Michael McIntyre ends up on the ground lying down. That's incredibly hard to do on stage because everyone's looking at you, and it's a weird thing to lie down on a stage in front of people. That takes an awful lot of courage, but you wouldn't think about that if you're just watching. You'd be like, oh yeah, he's lying down. It means nothing. But I never lay down in 11 years of doing comedy, 2,000 gigs or something. I never lay on the floor, right? And Seinfeld said the first 3 years of his act was from like his nose to his head. He sort of pointed. He basically said it's an entirely cerebral act, is what he's saying. There wasn't anything physical for 3 years. Because it takes actually a lot of courage to get to the point of like moving around on stage, for example. Anyway, so those are the kind of things we could discuss on your on this Jim Bowen stream.
We should do it. I definitely want to do that now because it's just one of those things. You know, watching Nick Dixon break down Bobby Davro in Brighton in 1992 or something like that. You know. Anyway, let's carry on.
Just before you go on, I'll just an extra compliment to Nick. I just go and encourage people to go and actually look at Nick's act, because obviously people think, oh, he's just the comedian guy on GB News.
Retired.
But what's it, ex officio? But
emeritus, comedian emeritus.
And I said to Nick, we chatted last week, and I said I had to sort of apologise to him because in my mind, you see someone on the television, and you sort of downgrade them in your mind. You think, oh, this is some comedian who's probably a bit rubbish, and they're just slumming it on TV. But actually, Nick's act is really brilliant. I think it's really good. Go away and actually look at it. It is kind of very vulnerable in a way. It sort of unspools things, and then, as he says, he kind of, as a streamer's consciousness, he kind of withdraws them and then spools them out again and then calls back to them. And it's very fast, actually, I found, and really, really good.
Thank you very much, Simon. Well, go and watch the one called, if you want to watch one, go watch one called If Hitler Started a Comedy Night, which is me at the backyard. It's got a few 100 and something thousand on YouTube. I went too fast because I was headlining. I was so bored by the time I had to wait too long to get on because Lewis Schaefer was emceeing. But that's a long story. But it's a decent representation of my comedy. I'm not saying I was great or anything, but I'm probably slightly better than most people that give it up. Most people don't give up because they love doing it. But I deliberately just gave it up completely and hate it now and don't even want to look at comedy or think about it, except for this stream I'm going to do with AA. But other than that, my favorite book is my favorite novel is Thomas Bernhard's The Loser. And it's about a guy he's a piano virtuoso, but he comes across Glenn Gould. And because he can't be a genius like Glenn Gould, he just gives it up, sells his piano to some country doctor, just to some rubbish girl who's never going to be any good, and says, right, I'm never playing piano again. That's how I've been with comedy. But most people don't do that. They stick around, even if they're half decent at it.
Are you about to tell me that Konstantin Kissin is like a brilliant stand-up?
No, he was terrible. He was never a good comedian at all. No, he could never do it. He was an open. This is not even a diss, really. He was an open mic comedian who was very led and robotic and couldn't actually do it. But he, he's done what he's done, and he's done sort of
in contrast to his wonderful podcasting style, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into because we get into my origin story of trigonometry as well. That's a whole other hour of how I started a podcast with Francis, and he nicked it. But he's obviously done well in that, right? And no one can deny that. But his comedy was no good because he just didn't have the talent to do it.
Is it that people tend to be didactic in that sort of mode when they do their comedy act? So it kind of kills the comedy.
It's just simply a talent. And obviously, my level was a certain level, and then a Sean Walsh and a Michael McDowell and a Stuart Lee's a much higher level. There's levels of talent, but there is a level where I could do it. I would say, couldn't even do it because he didn't get beyond that basically open mic stage. And honestly, this is not even a diss. This is just a description. Mm-hmm. And then there's other people who just were so bad they'd get on, and they're just mental people at an open mic night. He was beyond that stage, but he was never at the sort of paid professional doing the Comedy Store. I was doing the Comedy Store weekends and all this thing. He was never at that stage and could never have got to that stage. And that's just simply a talent. Like people don't see it with comedy because they think it's just talking. But if you're on the stage playing the guitar, it'd be pretty obvious whether you could play or not, right?
So just to get this right, when Kissin says he used to be a stand-up, it's literally like somebody saying, "Oh, I was a footballer," but you find out that they've had trials for Scunthorpe or something like that.
More or less that. Yeah, he did do gigs, but he wouldn't have been. You would never seen him do it like a 20 at the Comedy Store or something like that. That would be seen as like an industry standard, or at the Glee clubs or something. I was going around doing all the clubs. He was never doing that. He was never on that level. And like I say, that's not even a diss. That's just a literal description.
All right, so I'm going to have to go and get my cigar, which means that we're going to have at least a minute of untrammeled, non-paused Curtis, okay?
Sorry, I will just add, though, that Konstantin Kissin did win he did win at least one award for comedy. Kissin. It used to be listed on his Twitter account. Anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know what that was, but that's meaningless.
I have no idea what Horst is talking about.
I don't know if it's
I won the Comedy Store Gong Show 1 year in, but that was it's just like a fun show at the Comedy Store where they can card you off, and people win these little awards when they start, or they win competitions, but they're all meaningless.
Participation.
It might even him putting it on his Twitter account might even have been a joke. Anyway, it was there for years. It was on his Twitter profile, but I don't know if it is anymore. He's blocked me, so
I'm so sorry.
They believed that instead of trying to change the world outside, the new radicalism should try and change what was inside people's heads. And the way to do this was through self-expression, not collective action.
U V W X Y
This is meant to be a searing feminist critique of women's work in the home.
But some of the left saw that something else was really going on. That by detaching themselves and retreating into an ironic coolness, a whole generation...
I am back now, so if you want to pause, you can.
We're beginning to lose touch with the reality of power. One of them wrote of that time, "It was the mood of the era, and the revolution was deferred indefinitely. And while we were dozing, the money crept in."
What's your date of birth, Larry?
But one of the people who did understand how to use this new power was Donald Trump. Trump realized that there was now no future in building housing for ordinary people because all the government grants had gone. But he saw that there were other ways to get vast amounts of money out of the state. Trump started to buy up derelict buildings in New York, and he announced that he was going to transform them into luxury hotels and apartments. But in return, he negotiated the biggest tax break in New York's history, worth $160 million.
Yeah, he picked up an old building called the Commodore Hotel, which was next to Grand Central Station, that had sort of fallen into decay, essentially, and he made a deal to renovate it and rebrand it as the Grand Hyatt. And as Adam Curtis says, the tax break was $160 million over 40 years. It was a property tax abatement. You know, it's hundreds of millions in today's dollars, you know, and this is what makes him this sort of, sorry, I was just going to say, he's just going to, like in the Mayfair set, Curtis talks about various people as transitional figures, like Jimmy Goldsmith and Jim Slater, where they, you know, moved away from the received wisdom of the markets towards this deregulation mentality and this ability to, you know, use the stock price to sort of supercharge acquisitions and kind of hold governments over a barrel. Sorry, go on.
Can I just add one trivial? Oh, go on. Yeah.
Well, just was the tax abatement just to help him help out the city, basically, by taking
this was the art of the deal. This was negotiating that particular abatement, so he would take over responsibility for doing these renovations, because essentially he wanted to make, you know, create a sort of new chic, you know, sense of happening New York. So he bought up lots of these old buildings and tried to revive these. Well, he did revive these areas into kind of prestige spots to draw money back into the city, the money that had kind of fled into the surrounding state.
Yeah, relatively trivial point. Sorry, but the type of music you use is also crucial. Like, this music is very similar to the music used in the Apprentice movie about Trump, and it's always like, "Down, Trump is evil." But if you play like happy making money music, like Push It to the Limit in Scarface, push it to the limit, you'd be like, yeah, it's great, he's making money, he's doing moves, he's rebuilding New York. So I don't like this anti-Trump propaganda, which is mainly through the use of discordant sort of drone notes.
Yeah, so Curtis loves his 9 Inch Nails, his Burial, but there's no Kenny Loggins. Why not?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, there was that one. Yeah. What was that bit of jazz that he used once, Simon? That
what the Floyd Kramer,
the Floyd Kramer, the jaunty
on the
tune
rebound
over the scenes of like carnage and dead bodies, and you know,
Yeah.
So, just to add to this as well, like, I don't know exactly what, but it's strongly suggested, maybe more than suggested, but by people like Ryan Dawson and the people who copy his work, that Fred Trump, at least, probably Donald Trump as well, did work with the Genovese family, well, maybe others, the mafia. As in, like, it was hard to construct. I mean, I know in this instance he was taking over an existing building, but he also constructed new buildings, right? Or him and his dad. Like, construction apparently in New York of any large building was impossible without the mafia. You had to pay them off. There was no, it would not get built. They controlled the unions, they controlled suppliers and stuff. And, so yeah, it's long been said that, yeah, just tying that back to the mafia.
Can I ask a quick question, Horace? Sorry. you said the people who copy his work. I noticed that when a friend of mine, who's Daryl Cooper, Marta made on Twitter, he went on Tucker Carlson, and it caused a bit of drama because he just slipped in that Whitney Webb had copied work from Ryan Dawson. And
I was sort of referring to that, yeah. But also I've heard Dawson say that as well. Yeah.
What is because I know Whitney Webb is pretty respected and stuff. Like, what is the story there? Because I saw a lot of people pushing back hard on that particular point.
I think I haven't looked into this myself, but I think Dawson would probably say that he's banned from all the things that Whitney Webb's invited onto. So she was quite free to just take his research and present it as her own. I don't know whether she has done that, but I think that's what he says. Because Dawson criticizes, the tribe. So that bans him from most things. He's actually anti-racist, but anyway, he is beyond the pale for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Daryl Cooper obviously is included in things, Daryl Cooper was giving Dawson credit there, yeah. So Dawson has said that for years, that people copy his work, and don't give him credit.
Okay, all right. But people like Whitney Webb's work is good as well. From what I understand, I haven't read it, but from what I understand, that people who've read those books say they're mind blowing. All right, okay. Let's
read them. Yeah.
Simon, you wanted to say something?
Nope. I'm okay.
Just also Dawson's work is often just scattered across loads of different live streams and a bit here and a bit there, whereas she releases books, which just makes it easier, more commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The city had to agree because they were desperate. And the banks, seeing a new opportunity, also started to lend him money. And Donald Trump began to transform New York into a city for the rich, while he paid practically nothing.
It is true, isn't it, that Trump was very good at getting his name stuck on the top of buildings? That he had actually very little to do with building. Is that true?
Yeah, that comes out later in this documentary. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
At the very same time, in 1975, there was a confrontation between two powerful men in Damascus, the capital of Syria. One was Henry Kissinger, the US Secretary of State. The other was the president of Syria, Hafez al-Assad.
Simon, I've got my dad's tweet. Text.
Yeah. What does he think of Hafez?
He then rang me. He then rang me to be like, "Did you get my text? You didn't reply." I was like, "Yeah, I did." So, hold on a minute. So, he'll be watching this as well. Hi, Dad. Okay, he says, "Hello. Sorry, I just saw your message. Assad was a shrewd army officer who, with a group of others, overthrew the old regime, but later eliminated all the rest. He was a Ba'athist and a pan-Arabist, who after a while became a dictator and ruled by an iron fist. Some say he massacred about 24,000 people in the city, which revolted against his regime. For some reason, in the Iran-Iraq war, he took the side of Iran against the Ba'athist Saddam regime. All in all, a top-down regime with all the top jobs given to his family and the Alawite sect. Corruption was rife in his era, which his son Bashir was supposed to address, but then we saw what happened."
Yeah.
So that was what he said.
It's a great summary. It's actually perfect. I mean, it's interesting. Baathism. I mean, obviously we remember all learning about the Ba'ath Party when we had the invasion of Iraq. Essentially, Baathism is a sort of Arab nationalist ideology, which looks to a sort of pan-Arabist arrangement, where a bit like a kind of EU of the Arabs, but it relies on, essentially, it's a socialist project. It's a revolutionary socialist project, and the Baathists are the vanguard. And the contrast you have here is that in Iraq, Saddam was kind of like right-wing Baathism, if you like. It was more nationalist. And Assad was, people around him originated what you call neo-Baathism, which was more of the sort of the left economic policies, state ownership, distribution of land, all of that kind of stuff. But they didn't go in for class struggle, because that would actually hamper the project of Arab unity. And he was from the mountain people, the Alawites, the Alawite mountains. And what happened when the French left in 1946, the French mandate ended. And what the French had done was, in order to govern Syria, which was divided amongst various minorities, but was mostly a Sunni population, around 70%, as I say, they loaded the army with lots of minorities, especially the Alawites, who made up about 50% of the army officers. And there were also Kurds and Circassians, and it kind of changed the sort of the pivot of social mobility and power in Syria. And after the French left, there was a sort of history of instability. There was about 20 coups over 20 odd years. And eventually, out of this, various of the Ba'athist tendency got to power. There was an incipient arrangement where Nasser in Egypt announced that they were going to merge Egypt and Syria and create a united Arab Republic. And of course, as would happen in a situation like this, Nasser wanted to edge Egyptians into all the dominant positions in the government in Syria as well. So there was a bunch of junior officers, including al-Assad and a chap called Salah Jadid, who eventually took over in one coup in 1963, and then again in 1966. So Jadid took over in 63 and stayed until essentially 66. They kind of refined the core of the Baathists and got rid of the old guard of the sort of the OG Baathists, because there was a split even within the Baathists in Syria as well. There was a chap called Michel Aflaq, who was the sort of influential thinker, and they sort of ditched his tendency in 1966. And then eventually Assad ousted Salah Jadid in 1970, and then took over as the kind of authoritarian leader of what is meant to be a socialist project, though.
Just a question about the ethnic stuff, like that. So, Hafez al-Assad and I guess his son came from the Alawite tribe.
They're Alawites, yeah.
Or Alawite sect or whatever.
Yeah.
But that bit of footage we saw at the start of the blood smear across the ground, that was supposed to be Alawites massacred by Bashar al-Assad's regime.
It was a government militia called the Shahabiyya, I think. And I think what it was representing is, over the time, I mean, AA's dad referred to the massacre, that was the Hama massacre in 82, where they did kill, I mean, it's estimated between 5,000 and 40,000 people in the city of Hama, and 100,000 people affected in terms of destruction, casualties and stuff like that. So there was a sort of insurgent Sunni kind of movement in Syria. The Muslim Brotherhood essentially were driving that. And over time, there were attempts to kind of destabilize the Syrian regime. But there's a very strong kind of, as his dad said, a very strong kind of coup-proofing by Assad and all of his Alawite connections. I mean, everything was essentially run on family networks and loyalty to the Alawites. So they were both vulnerable as a minority in a sense in population terms, but they controlled all the key positions. And they would allow Sunnis to take sort of nominal positions. You know, you could be head of this army brigade or this minister or something, but all of the key stuff was controlled by Assad and his Alawite network. And this sort of festered as a resentment, which obviously now has come out in the Sunnis essentially massacring the Alawites in Syria now. But essentially Assad did it through a kind of, I mean, this was kind of like an Arab East Germany, a very extensive surveillance state, secret service sort of arrangement. And in a sense, what Curtis is going to chart is sort of the hypernormalisation that goes on here in this story is Assad eventually kind of losing his dream of forging this kind of pan-Arabist arrangement, because he becomes increasingly embroiled in just trying to sort of maintain control of the country through these very sort of authoritarian means by managing his own networks, but he's not able to suppress, or at least the Syrian regime is not able to suppress over time the emergence of, Sunni challenge and resistance.
Okay, but that footage at the that footage at the start. Who killed who there?
So that was as I say, it was talked about as a government militia, but I think it was factionalism within the ruling regime that wasn't Alawite, because the people in the village who were killed were Alawites.
In the 2010s, that was right. In the Syrian civil war, I assume.
Yes, when it was I can't remember. I can't find the date now. It was 2013
in the few
or
years
something.
Right. In the few years before this documentary,
yeah.
And it was so. Just clarify for me one more time. Who was killed?
Alawites.
By.
Let me just try and find the actual.
Because the Alawites were in power.
Once I find my notes. Yep. They were, but. I mean, essentially, the problem with the military was it was riven with factionalism, because there were, the Sunnis were sort of itching to get ahead, and they were in some positions, but they weren't very well organized. So it would form into kind of, if you like, militias or paramilitaries, and in this case, it was 2013. It was a village called Hazwiya.
Okay.
Go on, Horace. Go on.
Oh well, I would just add, wherever, like all over the Middle East, you have the Muslim Brotherhood as a kind of like lake of lava under the mountain sort of thing, and they just, like, in various places they burst out. Like Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, for instance. And in Egypt, when Mubarak lost power, it was the Muslim Brotherhood who got elected, and they were obviously overthrown and executed by the current secular Western aligned regime. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Well, I guess my question is, what's the point of pan-Arabism if they're going to side with the Iranians against the Iraqis? You'd think they do Saddam a solid. What's the point of what is the point of being a pan-Arabist if you don't automatically side with Arabs in every conflict? I don't get that.
We shall see.
I do think that's one of the great failed projects of the 20th century. Yeah, the failure of the Arab world to unite in any respect, basically, because it's left them divided and therefore easily conquered by their enemies.
You know what, Eric Stryker and Warren, War Strike podcast, what they argue about, Warren Baylor, what they argue about the Hamas attack in October 2023 was that it was largely directed at, like, breaking up and stopping and reversing the proceeding towards more and more Arab states signing, well, especially Saudi, signing up to the Abraham Accords, because that was basically the Arab world beginning to turn its back on Palestine. That's the argument from that side. And I just thought that does make sense of a whole lot. It wasn't about, the hostages are a chip, and the murdering people was a chip, but it was to force the hand of Saudi away from making friends with Israel, which they were gradually doing.
I've just got to backtrack, and actually I've got to correct myself. You're quite right, Horace. I was misreading my notes there. It was a Sunni village that was attacked. It was, the government said it was the Al-Nusra Front, Islamist militants, i.e. Sunnis.
By the current government.
But some people were saying it was the Shabahir, this pro-government militia, who did it in actuality. So it's kind of, it was put onto Islamist militants killing Sunni people. But actually, there's the suggestion that the government militia, presumably would have been Alawite, then dominant, actually did it. So sorry, my mistake.
I mean, apart from it being a really, really messy, complicated civil war, there's also false flag attacks blatantly, right? There's all sorts of misattributed blame for this and that. Like all these supposed chemical attacks that they couldn't prove, this. Or a chemical attack took place, but it wasn't by Assad, it was someone trying to look like Assad.
Yeah, as exemplified by my misexplanation there, so to speak. Misunderstanding.
Well, who can blame it? I mean, it was so complicated. Still is.
Between the two men was going to have...
Sorry to come back to the current situation, but the thing that I didn't get is that recently Israel bombed the crap out of Damascus, and the new leader was just like, yeah, that's cool. How did that work? Like, why was he just cool with that? What sort of leader is this?
Was that troops that had helped him get to power, but then he wanted to get rid of them, and Israel was taking a problem off his hands?
I don't know. I really don't understand what happened in Syria a couple of weeks back. But
he's allowing them to. Yeah, he's allowing them to do the killing that Israel is objecting to, and then he's allowing Israel to
bizarre.
kill them.
It's a weird, bizarre thing. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, now we're going to have him at Davos." It's just weird
And
situation all round. But
Donald
anyway, let's
Trump
go on.
likes him, and he wears a suit now, so it's all right. So yeah.
Profound consequences for the world. And like in New York, it was going to be a struggle between the old idea of using politics to change the world and a new idea that you could run the world as a stable system. President Assad dominated Syria. The country was full of giant images and statues that glorified him. He was brutal and ruthless, killing or imprisoning anyone he suspected of being a threat. But Assad believed that the violence was for a purpose. He wanted to find a way of uniting the Arab countries and using that power to stand up to the West.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Kissinger was also tough and ruthless. He had started in the 1950s as an expert in the theory of nuclear strategy, what was called the delicate balance of terror. It was the system that ran the Cold War. Both sides believed that if they attacked, the other side would immediately launch their missiles and everyone would be annihilated. Kissinger had been one of the models for the character of Dr. Strangelove in Stanley Kubrick's film.
Mr. President, I would not rule out the chance to preserve a nucleus of human specimens. It would be quite easy. At the bottom of some of our deeper minds, yeah?
Henry was not a warm, friendly, modest, jovial sort of person. He was thought of as one of the more anxious, temperamental, self-conscious, ambitious, inconsiderate people at Harvard.
Kissinger saw himself as a hard realist. He had no time for the emotional turmoil of political ideologies. He believed that history had always really been a struggle for power between groups and nations.
Where's the lie?
I just wanted to add, I guess everyone here probably loves Dr. Strangelove. I think it's a really good film. I should watch it again. But I don't know if anyone's also seen this other nuclear drama from, well, it's not a comedy, this one, but Failsafe, also from the 60s, I think. Has anybody seen this?
No,
Henry Fonda.
I haven't seen
it's
it.
really good. It's really, really good. It's like tense. Henry Fonda, Walter Matthau, and the guy who plays the head of OCP in RoboCop are the main stars. Yeah, not Dick Jones, the other, the boss. Them three are the main actors, and it's what's it called? That guy who directed 12 Angry Men, Sidney Lumet. Yeah, it's one of his earlier films. It's really good, and it's there's also like, it's not like Dr. Strangelove, but it's like another intellectual who counsels for maximal aggression and war, who counsels for nuclear war. And it's just, it's very, I won't spoil the story for you, but I just recommend that. Failsafe, early 60s, not the later remake with George Clooney. Don't watch that.
But what Kissinger took from the Cold War was a way of seeing the world as an interconnected system. And his aim was to keep that system in balance and prevent it from falling into chaos.
I believe that with all the dislocations we now experience, there also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society carried up by the principle of interdependence. And if we act wisely and with vision, I think we can look back to all this turmoil as the birth pangs of a more creative and better system. If we miss
it, in a way, the world is still being tripped up by Kissinger, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because he has basically made it so intertangled that it's been impossible almost for Donald Trump and various other people to disentangle it.
Well, interestingly, in this clip here, this is an interview with Bill Moyers on PBS in January of 1975. in the same interview, he also says, which isn't shown here, we're at a period which, in retrospect, is either going to be seen as a period of extraordinary creativity or a period when really the international order came apart politically, economically, and morally. And he goes on to describe the biggest problem is the lack of purpose and direction in the West.
You say he was still behind it as well. He was probably physically still doing stuff because he lived till 2023. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
He lived till 100 years old.
Yeah.
He was still active as well. He was still doing interviews. He was at the Bilderberg and the WEF in like 2023. Yeah. Just
remember who gave him a really gushing obituary?
Oh,
everyone.
But in
particular,
Blair
Tony
was
Blair.
just beside himself with praise. I'm pretty sure that's his Darth Plagueis. That's his.
Yeah,
that's
certain
where
figures. Certain figures, you can tell that they're puppet masters because of their obituaries, right? You can tell from like Dennis Healey was another one. For some reason, the whole press, right to left, centre, everyone, they gave the most laudatory obituaries I've ever seen to Dennis Healey, who was a flop as a minister. It's crap, absolute crap.
Although he was greatly respected in the Commons, and actually went. I mean, Nick, you did that review of Enoch Powell recently, giving a speech, and I think I read somewhere that between the two of them, it was Healey and Powell who were the sort of prime intellect in the Commons at that time, and Tony Blair gave compliments in the obituary of Enoch Powell, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Thatcher did, which makes more sense. But so did Blair, yeah. But it's hard, But then, of course, Tony Benn still got on with Powell. They fell out for a little bit when he gave the 1968 speech, but they still got on later. So everyone just had to respect Powell because when you're talking about an intellect of that level, who can not respect it, really? By the way, Kissinger, even as a sort of globalist in his kind of very nature, he's born in Germany, but he sounds kind of almost posh English at times in this, but he also sounds ultra American at other times. I don't know. He's something kind of. He's almost like shape-shift. He's almost. I'm not going to say he's the devil, but he's almost like a kind of shape-shifting, timeless figure that lives for 100 years.
Well, he's synonymous. I've got to ask AA about this. He's synonymous with the phrase, realpolitik, which is kind of pragmatic, flexible, not really deeply principled in an ideological sense. But then there's contrasting term Machtpolitik, which I've heard you use as well. Is there a difference there?
Well, Machtpolitik is basically when you throw. It's basically just raw power, like it's you throw everything else out the window, and things basically devolve to. I mean, I would describe what Israel is doing right now as raw Machtpolitik. Right. Yeah. It is just the raw use of power, no matter what. I would describe the situation that the War of the Roses devolved into when Margaret of Anjou was leading Henry VI armies as a situation where this country devolved into raw Machtpolitik. So realpolitik, if it's done well, really is trying to avoid the situation of just balls out Machtpolitik, because that's basically a loss of order, and realpolitik is trying to maintain order. I will say I've read Henry Kissinger's big book, I think it's called World Order. It's a big, thick book, and I remember time and time again as a kind of student of Machiavelli reading that book and being like, I don't know whether Kissinger felt this way himself, but I certainly felt it reading it, where America basically cucks out of true realpolitik at key moments, right? And Kissinger writes it up. Maybe he has to do this because he was, involved with all these projects. But he's like, oh, look, in any other time in history, they wouldn't have just left North Korea and South Korea like that, right? Any other power in world history would have finished the job and wouldn't have left that rump state of North Korea there. They would have finished until the end. But America, because of exceptionalism, because of manifest destiny, because America's different and it's moral, we decided, just to leave it for, this reason or that reason. And there are a few key moments where I think, there are limits to his realpolitik too, because there's this, how can I put it? There's no other way to put it. America just has a long history of getting cold feet on conflict, whether it's Vietnam, Korean War, Iraq now, Afghanistan, where it just kind of gives up, right? Just gives up, and that is not really explained by Kissinger. He just lets it float there as, oh, this is American exceptionalism. Whereas if he was more thoroughgoing in his realpolitik, he would have argued, as Blair has done, by the way, that they should have finished the job. So, yeah.
It's the opportunity. I think there's going to be chaos.
The flight has been delayed, we understand now. The Kissinger will be arriving here about an hour and a half from now. So we'll just get have the press informed, and then we'll stay in contact.
I will say, by the way, speaking of Prophets of Doom, Nick, one of the things I came across in my research for that book that surprised me, almost blew my mind, was finding out that Kissinger was a student of cyclical history, of Spengler, and in fact, his original PhD thesis was on cyclical history, and he wrote a book in the 40s on the cycles of world history, and he was really into the logic of rise and fall. You'd never think of that of Henry Kissinger, but yeah, he was well into that stuff. So
wow,
it's a surprising discovery.
Yeah, and he seems to also have as you're saying, this realpolitik sort of realist attitude. But I was gonna, maybe I don't want to get too diverted, but I was just thinking about, he came from this experience with Nazi Germany and ended up with this really hard-nosed approach. But Soros came out of that and ended up with this globalist approach of trying to dissolve all borders, to dissolve all conflict that way. It's just interesting, maybe they came out with sort of completely different approaches from the same experience, but I don't know enough about it.
And it was this idea that Kissinger set out to impose on the chaotic politics of the Middle East. But to manage it, he knew that he was going to have to deal with President Assad of Syria.
Pause. What do we call that sound effects? I know it's unintentional, but did you hear the instruments playing there? Like,
I think it's a heat effect on brass instruments. I've heard about it. It's that they're playing all the correct notes, but there's some sort of distortion that goes on when you've got temperatures, upwards of 40 degrees. So it's kind of just an accepted thing.
Acid.
Yeah.
It's all trippy.
Sounds like a Residence song coming back to
yeah.
President Assad was convinced that there would only ever be a real and lasting peace between the Arabs and Israel if the Palestinian refugees were allowed to return to their homeland. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were living in exile in Syria, as well as in the Lebanon and Jordan.
Have you found that the Palestinians here want to integrate with the Syrians at all?
No, never. They don't want, not here or neither in Lebanon or in Jordan, never. No, because they want to stay as a whole, as a Palestinian. They call themselves those who go back, al-Aidun in Arabic.
Assad also believed that such...
Yeah, obviously, like there is a good reason for that. It's that, like, if they started integrating into the other countries they were in, they would cease to exist as Palestinians, right? They would be sort of defeated. But I've watched like documentaries and stuff about this. Like, it seems that the PLO, Arafat's lot, who are officially secular, so different from Hamas, different from Hezbollah, different from Islamic Jihad, they rebased themselves, after their conflict with Israel was going badly. I'm talking 60s, 70s, in several other countries, including, like, there's, I think now, and there has been for a long time, millions of Palestinians in Jordan, with whom I think they've got the most ethnic similarity. But yeah, also in Syria, also in Lebanon, maybe, also other countries. But Tunisia, for some reason, the PLO went and based itself in Tunisia for a while, and they murdered Tunisians. They murdered like Tunisian officials, but also civilians and stuff. So they don't want to integrate anyway, and also sometimes they have attacked and even, I think, tried to overthrow other states just for their own interests. Like the PLO and Arafat in particular, they're like pretty crazy. They're quite mad. And so yeah, it's not just a case of Syrians being racist or whatever. It's like she's saying they don't want to integrate. Like, then they would cease to exist. They want to be a separate nation and they want to be there temporarily.
We were talking about Wu-Tang earlier. One of the things that always puzzled me growing up was that one of the Wu-Tang slogans was PLO style. They loved doing it. Yeah, we're going to do it PLO style. What do they actually mean by that?
Murdering people.
Yeah, but basically, I've looked it up, and apparently, when they said PLO style, they were actually referring to the PLO, and they said that it symbolized struggle, resistance, and street survival in urban life in America, and they call it PLO style. So yeah, there we are.
Also blowing yourself up. No, I don't know. Did the PLO did that? But Tupac also named his crew after all like enemies of America, didn't he? And he called himself Machiavelli. You know, Tupac called himself Machiavelli sometimes, spelled differently.
Did
he?
He
Also named his
yeah, he did. His alter ego.
And he did
was
like an album.
Yeah.
That's like R. Kelly with the Pied Piper and the Weatherman are some of his aliases.
And then Tupac's crew were called Gaddafi, the Ayatollah, and other names like that. Yeah, like enemies of America. By his crew, I mean lesser rappers that he used.
That's weird because you know, like the Wu-Tang are actually like some that they all converted. I know RZA and Jizza are vegetarians. They're some weird sect of Islam, like 5%ers or something like that, or 3%. I can't even remember now, but yeah, they're all some weird sect of Islam, the Wu-Tang, which I've never quite understood. But
that's the thing, isn't it? Like, because you get the Nation of Islam as well, which is separate. Like, it's kind of treated as heresy by the rest of Islam. I think.
I think Farrakhan may be involved in some way. Like he was pretty influential in like 80s black community, like Louis Farrakhan. I don't know if he did it. He was Islamic, right? So.
Yeah. He's the head of Nation of Islam since I think their first one was called something else, Benjamin. Some other Islamic sounding name, Abrahamic sort of Islamic sounding name. But
I remember Public Enemy had an affiliate called Professor Griff. Do you remember him? And occasionally he'd make it onto a record and just go on kind of mad rants that I didn't really understand. So yeah.
And various famous Americans, blacks, have converted to Islam, haven't they? Like Dave Chappelle is apparently a Muslim, but it doesn't always.
Dave Chappelle is a Muslim.
Apparently, since
I looked this up.
And there's like a couple of basketball players and like various people. But yeah, it doesn't always mean Islam as practiced in Saudi Arabia or anything. It's like there's Nation of Islam, or there's just other sects, or it's just like a really loose description, like they pray that they don't go to a mosque or something. Sometimes like Ismaili Islam, or like one of these very small sects. But,
yeah, apparently
sort of religion of resistance.
Chappelle converted when he was 17. I've never heard that.
Yeah, he's not too noisy about it. But yeah, it's there.
It's a surprisingly common thing though in those communities that they're actually like low key Islam. Yeah.
And the Nation of Islam is they dress in like suits and bow ties, and it's about getting away from drugs and crime and stuff. It's not altogether a bad thing by any means, but it's also militantly anti-white, and they think the white man is literally the devil and stuff. But
and was created in a cave by that bloke. Have you heard that? Farrakhan obviously calls certain people termites and so on, but he also says that white people they were created by, I can't remember the guy's name. They literally believe they were created by some evil bloke in a cave. Have you not heard this? I can check it out for you, but it's something along those lines.
He's a really funny guy, Lewis Farrakhan. If you just get past all the hatred and the insults and stuff, he's funny. He's like really entertaining.
There is a weird sideline. Again, I was never able to work it out, but it's kind of like a subculture within the American black community where there's like kind of there's like an Egyptian angle.
Yeah.
Where like this is why like old dirty bastard called himself Osiris and things like this. It's like they're always going on about Ra, and harking back to the Egyptian gods because they've got this kind of odd idea that it's almost a little bit like black Hyperboreanism, but like it's Egyptian.
Yeah, here you go.
It's weird. Yeah,
this is just Wikipedia, but Yaqub. Have you heard about him as a figure in the mythology of Nation of Islam? According to their doctrine, Yaqub was a black Meccan scientist who lived 6,600 years ago and created the white race. Have you not heard this?
I have not. No,
I'm surprised. Yeah. He gathered followers and began the creation of the white race through a form of selective breeding, referred to as grafting. on the island of Patmos. I'm amazed. This is like, because people talk about Farrakhan, he's anti-Semitic and stuff. I'm always like, yes, but hang on. Can we also have a word for the poor whites who were created by this bloke?
Yeah, it goes
with
way
a massive
beyond
brain.
just,
There's a picture of him with a massive head, like a massive brain, and he created white people by selective breeding 6,600 years ago.
This is why Islam, Nation of Islam is separate from the rest of Islam, because that's just a completely different origin story and everything. It's just heresy. You can't have that.
Like, does it ever get back to the Ayatollah, and he's like, yeah, this is just mental. I can't go here because this is not, like, Muhammad never talked about giant brain creating the white man. You know?
Just remember, if you ever hear Farrakhan say something based, remember that will be a very temporary alliance. Because he does think you were created.
So there was also this offshoot called the New Black Panther Party, and I think their leader, it was in a Louis Theroux documentary in the late 90s. Their leader was called Khalid Mohammed, so obviously another Muslim name. And they were like violent, you know, they were, he died quite young, this guy, but they were, again, like just always ranting about the crackers and the, you know, the honky, you know, the ghost face. And everything is, and like anytime, like I can't go on about that, but yeah.
No, all I can say to that is, why are you so obsessed with me? You know what I mean? They're obsessed. They're like always thinking about us, and like, sorry.
I quite like this guy because he was just very frank. It was just like, let's just separate out. Let's just have two different countries. One for the. I was like, yeah, that kind of works. You know, like look at all the acrimony that just comes from trying to live next door to each other. You know? But yeah, like in these, Khalid Mohammed actually got into the state of cooperating with far right, white nationalist groups, like White Aryan Resistance and stuff. They actually tried to make an alliance. It didn't really come to anything because they're both like disorganized and stuff. But they will, you know, even though they hate the white man, they will come around to a potential alliance against the mutual enemy, which is, I guess, the liberal democratic order or whatever, you know. But yeah, Louis Farrakhan will just attack everyone. And he's funny. He's an entertaining guy. He's another one like Henry Kissinger. He's still going. He's like 99 or something. He's still the leader of this thing.
Do you remember there was actually a wrestling group based on the Nation of Islam called the Nation of Domination? And when The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, first kind of burst onto the scene before he was like a megastar, he was part of this kind of African Nation of Islam group called the Nation of Domination, and they were heels, obviously, and they were kind of cut like. Have you ever seen these guys?
Yeah, what's funny, there's a picture as well of The Rock in the background. They're all wearing like the full gear with the hats. Yeah, you see this picture? Yeah. No, but, that one as well. I was thinking of a different one. Let's see this one in the top left as well. But in both of them, you notice The Rock's like, I'm not really involved with these guys. I'm not wearing all this stuff. This is temporary for me. There's another one. He's actually at the back. If you go to the top left, he's actually in the back, sort of saying, no, the other one two across. He's like going next to that. See that? He's like, I'm not really part of this, guys. I'm just sort of photobombing from the back. But notice I'm not wearing any of the gear.
And they're just lumping him in.
Temporary thing.
And he's not African. He's not African American. He's like Polynesian or something, isn't he?
Mate, in pro wrestling, it doesn't matter. You look a little bit, you've got slightly, you know, your eyes are like that. You're Japanese, mate. You know, every red Indian was secretly Italian, and you know, nobody is the actual race. Mr. Fuji wasn't Japanese, you know.
Oh, what was he then? He was, surely.
No, he was Hawaiian, I think.
Oh,
or Samoan or something.
Next, you're going to tell me the Undertaker wasn't literally dead.
No, like literally nobody is from where they say they are. So yeah.
Just about the night that
he wasn't from Death Valley.
Look, I'm going to blow your mind. Akeem the African Dream was not from Africa.
What about Yokozuna?
Yeah, he was Samoan as well.
Oh my god, this is tearing up my childhood.
Yeah.
That just about that name, Nation of Domination, as well. That I think is a reference to the sort of rhetorical style of a lot of sort of black nationalists of the 60s, 70s, 80s. Do you know what I mean? Like the sort of ranting style that you see in some things, like that guy Fred Hampton, Black Panther, who was probably murdered by the cops. It seems. He's just a classic example of this. Like it's sort of loads of rhyming and like clever sounding words without actually really using them properly.
I actually think that was
and there was a joke, in South Park once saying something about, have you even read the Emancipation Proclamation? And the other person says, no, I don't listen to hip hop.
I think it was quite a risque thing for WWF for Vince to make that faction a heel faction, because in wrestling there's always a chance that it could like become popular or somehow, or like people start cheering for them. What are you going to do then? Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of they were kind of dicing a little bit. That you know, it didn't really take off that whole thing. So anyway, let's
what's really weird is I dreamt of the word Polynesian last night. How often do you dream of the word Polynesian? And Horace just said it there, and I think I predicted all this in my dream just to make it even weirder. Very Curtis-esque, maybe. I'm just chucking that in. Do you ever predict stuff in dreams? I literally looked up the word Polynesian this morning because I'm thinking, why am I dreaming about the word Polynesian? And it's because you said it now, and time's
you
not
manifested
really
it, Nick.
Yeah, because time's not really linear.
Of your mind.
It's an illusion that time's linear, so that's what it is. Sorry to get esoteric. I know we're not doing that on this stream.
Peace would strengthen the Arab world. But Kissinger thought that strengthening the Arabs would destabilize his balance of power. So he set out to do the very opposite, to fracture the power of the Arab countries by dividing them and breaking their alliances, so they would keep each other in check. Kissinger now played a double game, or as he termed it, constructive ambiguity.
Curtis didn't have to work too hard to make him look sly and sinister and kind of calculating.
Not really.
There, did he?
Series of meetings, he persuaded Egypt to sign a separate agreement with Israel. But at the same time, he led Assad to believe that he was working for a wider peace agreement, one that would include the Palestinians. In reality, the Palestinians were ignored. They were irrelevant to the structural balance of the global system.
The hallmark of Kissinger's thinking about international politics is its structural design. Everything is always connected in his mind to everything else. But his first thoughts are on that level, on the structural global balance of power level. And as he addresses questions of human dignity, human survival, human freedom, I think they tend to come into his mind as an adjunct of the play of nations at the power game.
When Assad found out the truth, it was too late. In a series of confrontations with Kissinger in Damascus, Assad raged about this treachery. He told Kissinger that what he had done would release demons hidden under the surface of the Arab world. Kissinger described their meetings. Assad's controlled fury, he wrote, was all the more impressive for its eerily cold, seemingly unemotional demeanor. Assad now retreated.
Genuine seething is what we're seeing there. Genuine seething.
He started to build a giant palace that loomed over Damascus. And his belief that it would be possible to transform the Arab world began to fade. A British journalist who knew Assad wrote,
just to explain, those beads there, they have all across the Islamic world, they have those. It's not the rosary. I forget what they're called now. Even my dad, who is a completely almost Reddit tier non-religious man, had those, and they use them almost like
worry beads, isn't it?
Like a stress ball, like worry bead. Yeah, so it's very common for people
like
just to
smoking.
have them while they're thinking. Yes, it's like smoking. It's like smoking or thinking or something. I think it's less religious than the rosary. I mean, maybe it's got some, Islamic connotation or something, but typically people just have them for that, and they count or whatever, play with them.
Assad's optimism has gone. A trust in the future has gone. What has emerged instead is a brutal, vengeful Assad, who believes in nothing except revenge.
What do you guys think of revenge? Do you think it's like a bad thing to desire revenge when you have been wronged? Do you think that's bad?
I kind of I mean, in that book on Shakespeare's morality that I mentioned right at the start of the stream, I've come to think that it has to take somebody to forgive and forget somewhere. Otherwise, you get perpetual cycles of revenge and escalating violence. So somebody somewhere has to be the bigger and better man. That's my view, which is probably quite Christian or quite kind of, de facto, like the notion of forgiveness or mercy or something. Because unless you have that, you just end up with a never-ending cycle of like, oh, you killed my father. Well, you killed my father, and it just never ends otherwise. So that's my
view.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to say, I'm always torn as well for Christian reasons, because you think like, maybe Jesus did crack that whole thing. Then again, why is John Wick so satisfying? And every Clint Eastwood film, why do we seem to think it is actually just to go, if they kill your family, like in The Outlaw Josie Wales or something, it is just to hunt them to the ends of the earth. Or if they kill your dog, that is also, we seem to inherently think that's correct. And if you look at some of the atrocities done to the English people lately, or British people, the grooming gangs and so on, you do tend to think, actually, revenge is good. I'm torn personally.
Yeah, I tend to take the transcendent view, or the Michael Corleone view, that it sort of blinds your judgment if you think like that. And as AA says, it just lends itself to a corrosive cycle that will ultimately undermine power if you're trying to move into politics and organization of society. Like the mafia say, killing is bad for business.
You're saying it's just business. The thing is, though, he did actually he did kill loads of people, Michael, didn't he? I mean, to be fair, that was his whole strategy. It's just business. Yeah, but he did kill them all anyway.
But as his consigliere says to him, I mean, are you going to go after everyone? He says, no, just my enemies. Yeah,
just my enemies.
In a strictly political sense, though, isn't it? Not you don't want to cut your nose off to spite your face kind of revenge. I murder people every day in my mind, but
right.
I just don't think it's operationalizable.
Do you think Robert De Niro was right to go back in Heat and finish that bloke off?
No, because he gets him killed, doesn't it?
It cost him everything, yeah.
But then in Carlito's way, he doesn't finish off Benny Blanco from the Bronx. And what happens there?
And that cost him everything. Yeah. All instincts. I should have finished it. The street's gonna talk. All that. Yeah.
I do think that it is a prevalent feature of Middle Eastern thinking and of particular groups of people from the Middle East. And I'm often struck. Do you remember I went through that whole spell of being really into Michael Winner, Simon, right? I mean, Michael Winner's films are they're ridiculous for revenge fantasies.
Death
have you ever watched was it Death Wish? It's fucking mental, that film.
Yeah.
So there is something cathartic about it, but then you think like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just. Maybe this is the default 90s liberal coming out, but I just think surely there's a better way sometimes than to keep that cycle going over and over and over.
It's like a theme you've talked about in a lot of your analysis of politics, that the things you want to do are not necessarily the best thing to advance your interests. You may feel like it's going to be satisfying, but it's not going to work out for you. In fact, it's going to mitigate against you getting what you want.
I mean, I even think now, like if you have a look at the way that particular country in the Middle East is going on, it's like they can't let any slight go. They can't let any little comment go. It's all or nothing. It's all, and to me, it just feels it's just destructive. Ultimately, it's destructive because it just like there's no end to this. It's never going to be an end to it. And then I always think of the Thomas Sowell question. And then what? And then what? What's beyond stage one? And it's not going to end, is it? So somebody somewhere has to say, right, well, enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. And then a new one, then somebody else will slight somebody else, and then a new cycle will start. I don't know. Like, what is ethics?
Ethics hard to settle.
Ethics at some level, though, has to come down to going against your base instincts. Right? All of the Greeks talk about, well, yeah, there's the base instincts, what your emotion wants to do. Actually, you need to control those emotions and, think rationally, which may not be a popular thing to say at this moment because lots of people want revenge, as we've talked about, but it's like, well,
they're piling up crimes to be avenged. But yeah, that means the question looms larger, but I'm inclined to agree. It's like, every bit of me sort of animalistically, bestially wants revenge on various people, but let's think about the future, Yeah.
I'm sure it must be in Machiavelli, isn't it? That, when you have to do evil, you do it in as concentrated a form, as minimized a form as possible, because to some extent it's a performative, we're going to execute the ringleader as an example, but leave it there.
Yeah, and he makes a point of saying, make sure it's an underling who does it, and then when you're merciful, you be the one to be seen to be merciful.
Give it to your bad lieutenant.
Can you make the opposite argument that David Stark is not a name drop? He was making to me the other day in this interview I'm going to release soon, and he was saying Christian ethics can't be the basis for a state because you have to be hard-hearted with things like welfare and so on. So couldn't you say that on an individual level, actually you could get revenge? And it's the opposite. In an individual level, you can be more compassionate, but on the state level, you have to be non-compassionate because it can't function that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's when it's what the dramatic interest is in something like The Godfather. It's when it's bound up in one person. Michael Corleone as the feeling human being versus his position in the family and having to sort of cut off his feelings in order to be able to make it work, and yet he still sends himself to hell. It's the balance of not mortgaging your future to violence.
I'm just wondering, is it transcending both the good, the violent, and the compassionate in the individual? It's transcending both individual whims, actually, maybe.
I do think there's something, right? So, like, again, to the Middle Eastern mindset, right? And again, it's not just people from Israel. It's like Iranians are like this as well. Be like, yeah, but what about this time in like 1250? I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, at some point, you have to let it go. It's like, okay, well, Napoleon. That happened. We were at war with the French, 100 years war. But at some point, you have to get over it.
Yeah.
And you have to be like, right, now France has to be a normal country, and we just have to be like, let bygones be bygones, not hold 1,000-year grudge. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's Mediterranean culture of vendetta, isn't it?
I have to say, in my own life, it has been better to just suddenly drop grudges. I've even surprised myself. I've consolidated them. There's only one guy now. I've consolidated all my beefs into one guy who I really hate. But all my other beefs I've dropped.
I'm sorry,
even
mate.
Some of the
I didn't mean it. I'm sorry.
Even some of the people we mentioned today, I used to have like multi-year beefs against, but I've dropped them all in favor of this one. I've consolidated into one guy.
I don't want to get too like esoteric as well, though. But there is a truth in let's just say you're consumed by vengeance and hatred. Somebody's done something, and people have done terrible things to me, like when I was doxxed and all what happened there. Right, and I had people like say, "Well, you can't let this go. You have to get out. You have to go after them, and all this sort of stuff." And I'm like, at some point, you just have to rise above it. Otherwise, it consumes you. Otherwise, you spend all day focusing on that one thing, and then the more you focus on it, the more that thing will come to like impinge on you, like just take over every single part of your life. So you just have to let things go. You have to let things go.
You lose even more than what the person did to you. You continue losing more and more.
Yeah. You're basically, sort of sunk cost fallacy. You're basically quoting Will Smith when he says, "Let God deal with the things they do, because hate in your heart will consume you too." That's what you're saying, AA.
And the thing is, if you live long enough, the old Shakespeare comes in. The whirligig of time brings in his revenges. I mean, you live long enough, you see people done down by events.
Well, that's the river. My enemy, the river quote, right?
There was
a more by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies float back.
There is a more important thing, though, right? Is that if you give everything over to focusing on vengeance and trying to get your own back on various different people, in a way, you're letting those people control you. You're being externally defined by that relationship, right? And ideally, you need to be sovereign over yourself. So you cannot let these sorts of things utterly define who you are. Otherwise, they'll have a habit of, destroying you. And even if you end up winning, even if you end up like actually destroying your enemies, you're losing something of yourself. If that makes any sense. It's like, imagine you're on that side in the conflict now. It's like, okay, we've won, but you've also like just completely razed things, to the ground in rubble. Like, what have you lost in yourself, your humanity, something, So
if
anyway,
not poisoning your own social network, which will just look at you differently.
Anyway, let's carry on. Let's carry on. We should put 10 more minutes, and then we'll.
Because I've got to do my. Sorry to be a party pooper. I've got to do my other podcast straight after this, and the latest I could do it is in pretty soon. Yeah.
Well, we've got it's exactly 20 minutes, and we were looking at these guys. So shall we wrap up now? I reckon.
Yeah.
Let's
Soviet
wrap up.
Union's the next section, so we can cover that next time.
All right. Well, let us ask Nick. This podcast you're about to release, where can people find it?
Oh yeah, well that's on my YouTube channel, which is just Nick Dixon, and I put the full versions on my Substack, which is nickdixon.net.
Simon.
Oh, well, I'm on Twitter as usual at Simon__Roberts, and I just encourage you to go and sub to Nick's channel and go and read Horace's Substack and also the Forbidden Texts.
Yes, and I'm at NJ Dixon on Twitter. Sorry.
Horace.
Thanks, Simon.
Cheers, everyone. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Yeah. I'll just repeat that. My Substack. If you haven't read, I haven't put a new one up for a few months, but the old one's good as well. eternalhorus.substack.com.
Yeah, and pick up a course at the academic agency. I've just realised there are a couple of super chats. I'll bang through them now. Principled Uncertainty just says YouTube banned everything I type, so have money, I guess. Well, thank you very much for that. Atlas Code. I've seen a few people saying that, moaning about YouTube automatically deleting stuff. Hey, it's YouTube. They've always done that. Atlas Code says, give Tucker's latest interview with Richard Werner a listen. Banks don't lend money, they create money. Gammon Alden have also shown this. Eric Nehemiah says the collapse of the USSR would be a good example of why, what would happen to the currency, etc. Lucia Shaw Moffat says, is the purpose of the economy to serve the collective racial folk, or is it to serve the public-private partnership? He also says, what is in the best collective interest long-term for the British folk, econ-wise? That should be the question. For us, no bias, what is the best action? Maybe you could think about that in the next week for us. Come back to us.
Okay.
Chris Primer says, Charles Bronson knew what to do. He was a man of action. When a man has nothing to lose, he may have a death wish. Broman Henk says, when the Springboks win, it's like free We Love the Emperor Day. It feels very depoliticized in South Africa after. Why would there be unrest? We just won. Clear Them Out says, Mike Hager, the mayor of Final Fight, was a former pro wrestler. Yes, he was. Dave Harris says, they are attempting to make rugby woke. It appears to have been less successful, however. I feel it will go. How do we counter the subversion of sport? Well, that's very difficult if you're not running the media networks. Clear Them Out says, this is for the Bowie streams. Oh, well, thank you very much. Are you a Bowie fan, Nick?
Do you know what? It's one of my very few musical Achilles heels. I don't know loads about him. A little bit embarrassing, actually.
Firestorm says, not able to stay for it live, but very excited to watch these EPs. Please make sure you archive all this, especially with the current environment. All of the Curtis streams are backed up on my Forbidden Texts. There's a separate tab called Adam Curtis Archive, and these shows are all going up on there. There's a couple that are missing due to copyright, and you'll find them on there. Eyes That Watch 69 says, not to simp too hard, but I have missed this greatly. Well, thank you very much, sir. And I'm pretty sure... Seamus O'Blaine says the Japanese are said to have had a hand in the Nation of Islam. Well, that's a bizarre angle.
American why the Japanese? Do you mean people from Hawaii then? Like,
yeah, Mr. Fuji started the Nation of Islam. Yeah,
in wrestling, and then it expanded into the real world.
Murky and Anglo says, "Are you aware, AA, that the YouTube, Google auto removes comments and chat messages, certain words and sentences that insinuate to target group? Hair pulling. Yeah, there are certain phrases that get auto flagged, and a lot of them are sent through to a filter. But because I get hundreds, if not thousands, of comments every day and week, I don't always don't have the time to go through all of those comments individually. So just, choose your words wisely. Lewis Shaw Morfitt says, revenge is best served cold. No hot emotions when it is served. get it done and move on, but it must happen when you are wronged or your folk are. QWERTY says game theory would dictate that the person who forgives gets BTFO'd by the person who does not. Prisoners, Collines. So there we go. And Principal Austerity finally says, my most 2024 happening. Last year, some strange transhuman folks came towards me. A woman in a burqa saw my face and smiled with her eyes. So there we go. All right. Well, thank you very much, all. Good luck with the podcast, Nick, and we'll see you all next week.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.